everyone, and welcome to the Game Informer Show. I am Andy McNamara, your host. I am joined for this first segment by Joe Juba.
Hello.
And Matthew Cotto.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Great.
Doing good.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm going to do a little breakdown of what we've got coming up for the rest of the show, but you two are here to talk Death Stranding, so start holding your breath now, because it's going to get good. So on this week's show, we're going to talk Death Stranding, first off, and then we're going to go into talking about everything Blizzard. We have a new issue out that's covering a ton of... it's kind of unprecedented. I actually was kind of surprised we were able to do this. It was like... We were talking to Blizzard, and they were like, what would you think about doing multiple games at once? And I was like, I would have done one of these.
Yeah, I mean, we essentially have three or four cover stories this month, basically.
Yes, all in one
issue. Yeah.
And then it was like, hey, will you do custom art? And then maybe, because we can do 4 covers at once really easily, could you do one where you put all the Blizzard characters on one? And they were like, sure. And I was like, oh my God, that was the easiest thing ever. I couldn't believe, I was blown away by how well that went. And I'm so excited. I'm a longtime Blizzard fan, so...
you've played some Blizzard games before.
I've put some hours into Blizzard games. So really super exciting. So we're going to have all the lead writers on all the cover stories on to talk Diablo IV, Overwatch 2, World of Warcraft Shadowlands, Hearthstone Descent of Dragons, and then hopefully after all that we will have an interview with Liam Esther and David Gaider about Chorus, an adventure musical from Summerfall Studios that just hit its goal for fundraising, and I think it's a really exciting kind of new direction for just making games different. And I'm super, super excited about it. Like, it's just something I didn't think was going to happen, and it's happening, and I'm thrilled about that.
Well, especially since David Gaider, who like a lot of people know as one of the writers on the Dragon Age franchise,
yes.
Like, I think when he said he had a new project coming, people were expecting one kind of thing, and then Chorus, like, that launched, and they got something very different. But it's great to see that people are still supporting him, and I know they still have stretch goals that they're shooting for, too.
Exactly. So there's still things to do there. Okay. All right. So one of the, we all got a chance to play the game early.
We're talking Death Stranding
Yes,
now.
Death
Okay.
Stranding. And, Kojima, everyone knows Kojima, I assume, famous for Metal Gear and, worked with Konami forever. This is his new studio, Kojima Productions. This is his first big game. There was, Andrew House, the then head of PlayStation, did a, reveal video where they handshake with Kojima. I mean, this game is a big deal, been highly anticipated. We just recently had the review lockdown lift so we could get review scores out there, which I was excited for because, as I assumed, they were all over the map, right? We had all kinds of different takes. Kato did our review, which is up on the site. Joe has been playing it. He's a longtime Kojima fan, aficionado. Mm-hmm. He knows many things.
I got to visit Kojima Productions when I was there for
Tokyo Game Show
this year, do an interview with him. So yeah, it's safe to say I'm a fan.
Yes, indeed. And then I played them to make sure that I could have a up-to-date conversation with these guys. I have not finished the game. I don't believe Joe has finished the game.
I have not yet.
It's a pretty long experience. So please take that in mind. So, Joe and I don't have the full thing, but I think we can definitely come up with some opinions.
There are some things that I don't know, no matter how the story and things end up unfolding on this game, like, they're not going to change the way the first 25 hours or so have been unfolding for me, right?
Correct, yeah. So, and I always kind of point this out, too. I mean, you don't have to eat a whole meal to know you don't like the way something tastes. Right? And I know that's a little bold. I mean, obviously there could be other flavors but if something like on your plate tastes bad, some element, I think you can comment on that. And
Or good.
Correct. Correct. I'm sorry. I'm leading the conversation there, and I apologize. I just want to make sure everyone understands that kind of caveat. Let's say going in there. So before I start to drill you, I wanted to read a little bit from a BBC News article by Stephen Powell that I thought was interesting. All right,
let's hear it.
This is about Kojima's general take on like the way he's kind of set it up, which is this is the era of today is about individualism. He tells Radio 1 Newsbeat in his Tokyo studio. We may be connected through the internet more than ever, but what's happening is that people are attacking each other because we're so connected. This is like kind of giving talking about the underlying kind of goals he has behind the game. Yeah. So right, he has this. President Trump right now is building a wall. Then you have Brexit, where the UK is trying to leave the EU, and it feels like there are lots of walls and people thinking only about themselves in the world. In Death Stranding, we're using bridges to represent connection. There are options to use them or break them. It's about making people think about the meaning of connection. Kojima is keen to stress that his game's message does not target any one country or community. Bringing people back together is the universal theme in his eyes. So that's pretty deep, right?
Well, the thing that touches upon, other than, obviously, he's laying everything out. And then as you go through the story, it's, the usual Kojima mix of, some long cut scenes, some over exposition, some, really heavy handed, clunky stuff. But as you just pointed out there, it's very much a
social commentary.
It's very much a tell, don't show. And Kojima, the reverse is always, they always tell you, hey, you got to show, show not tell, man. Mm-hmm. Well, Kojima does the opposite of it in this game, and then some. So it's, but we all know that sort of going in. So that's kind of one of the pillars that maybe we're used to in terms of the story. And I think that there's some good, there are some good themes, there are some good topics that it touches on. And the interesting thing is regardless of that setup. And regardless of what you think about it, it is interesting that in the gameplay, you do get to one of the fundamental things that he talks about, which is that because of the online connection, and you can play it, offline, and let's say you're playing and your connection drops, it's not a big deal. You can just reconnect. But the point being that is fundamentally he's right in the sense that regardless of the story, when you're going and you come across an area where maybe someone's put down a ladder, maybe someone's left a bike for you or something, or you do the reverse and you get a like for it, or you give them a like for it, you do get that actual fundamental sense of like, what? It feels good to
There's
help.
A community to it. There is a when you do things, you're not doing them just for yourself. That is true. You know what I mean? You're like, I'll leave this ladder here. It helped me. Hopefully it'll help someone else. Certainly is a thing. So before we get too deep, I just want to kind of say that because I think that's a good, kind of weird, deep start. But what I want to get to first was actually, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Joe. I know you want to make a social comment. And we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that.
Okay. We'll come back
to that. We'll come back to that. Don't worry. It's not, there are so many themes we're going to get to here. This is going to be a longer talk than I want it to be, but I think there's a lot to talk about.
Okay.
What I think one of the major questions as we kind of talk about this overarching connection theme is, I think a lot of people look at Death Stranding and go, I have no idea what this is, right? So let's explain the game. What is Death Stranding?
Okay, I'll give it a shot. Without an opinion uncolored by the sort of knowledge of the whole narrative. Because from a mechanical standpoint, mechanical gameplay standpoint,
like the loop, we can. You want to talk about the loop specifically?
This is it's a delivery game. Like that's the mechanical gameplay loop of it, where you are in a sort of post-apocalyptic world that does not have much life above the surface, and your job as you're a porter, but it's really a delivery guy.
Yeah.
Who you go to different strongholds or distribution centers that sort of have the remnants of civilization and their resources. And it's your job to brave the dangers of the surface world by taking packages from one place that has resources to another place that doesn't. Or sometimes it's things like there's a sick old guy up on a cliff and you need to take a pacemaker up to him. Or in one case, there's someone who wants a pizza and you go take a pizza to them, So, but ultimately that's what you're doing is you're loading up cargo in one place and taking it to another place. But it's not always A to B. Sometimes it's A to B to C to D to C back to A. It's kind of about setting up, you get new cargo at the different places you visit. You optimize and sort of...
There's cargo out in the world you can pick up.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. You can find lost cargo sitting around. So you kind of optimize or change your route depending on what you've got with you. But that's really ultimately what you're doing.
And on top of that, the goal of the game is you're reconnecting America, which has become disconnected, right? As you make these deliveries, you're also adding more communities and areas and outposts to the larger network, which is like, was the mission given to you by the president in Die Hard, man?
Yeah.
Yeah. Your mission is basically to just by talking to some of these people who live in these like bunkers or in these distribution centers and things like that, you hook their facilities up to this sort of general nationwide internet, like a wireless essentially,
yeah,
like a
and
wireless signal.
And that's also when you connect a community, an outpost. That is also when you enable the social strand elements. I know I'm using his words there, but basically the kind of
That's how other players' objects can populate your game.
Correct.
Once that area is on that in-game internet called the chiral network, then other players' stuff can show up in that part of the world.
And those nodes become, as they become part of your network, they can help you more. You can fabricate items now. You'll, obviously use that as a jumping off point for other missions. And once they get on the net, you can take resources from them to do things you want to do in the world. So that's another benefit of bringing these places on the node.
And it's not just hooking them up just to the network. That's usually just the first step. And then if you linger in an area, you can keep doing deliveries and you essentially raise your affinity with each one of these, with each person in these areas. And then you can get different rewards and, things like that way.
So one of the things that is interesting is that the world is filled with BTs that have some connection, it feels like, because they have an umbilical cord. They're kind of ethereal things in the land that are connected to a catastrophe that has taken place that you're solving, right? I mean, I watched the first number of hours of video, and I'm not sure I quite understood what brought humanity to this edge, right? That it's on. I know there are these void zones that happen when a human goes into this other world and essentially explodes and leaves an amazing crater, by the way, in the world. It's kind of it's actually mind-blowing. But so you're set out, and I think we should discuss that loop of like as you go out, these are the things that are in your world. So what do you encounter? Now, first of all, I think one of the things I would like you to discuss is the ground. It feels like a Mars landscape out there where you can trip over rocks and you have to go through streams and climb mountains. Can you discuss navigation and how that is built into the gameplay?
Yeah, when Joe had mentioned about optimizing your load, because obviously you're taking on the cargo you want to take from point A to point B, but you're certainly free to pick up whatever you want along the way, and that helps your affinity. Because you're like, well, if I'm going this direction, I might as well pick this package up and deliver it. And then that gets into the triggers. So it's keeping your balance. You want to do left, right, and you'll see them kind of topple over. And you can get a sense, obviously, of if you load it more onto one side, like if you're holding something in your hand and you have something attached to that shoulder, you're gonna teeter a little bit. That can be a little frustrating in the beginning, but I do believe it kind of evens out a little bit where you think about it less, because as you go on, like if you befriend, I think it's the engineer, you'll get some like a skeletal sort of framework suit, and that can level up, or you can get better
There's a
versions of
progression
it.
system where you get better vehicles, better ways to move and transport goods. Essentially, that's the gameplay arc, right?
And that's like the moment to moment. As I said, is as you're going from A to B, when you're in the moment, that's what you're dealing with. And maybe you're being attacked while that's happening. Maybe you're trying to avoid from sliding downhill and busting open like a piñata with all your packages when you fall, or in a river,
Yeah, and I think this mechanic is a great example of of the way a lot of things feel to me in Death Stranding, which is I like conceptually what it's trying. It's unique, but at the same time, I don't think I like it. As a game. So for instance, the idea, so many games just take for granted player movement.
Yes.
and the terrain, right? You press forward on the stick and you run, and whether that's up a hill or down a hill
It's all
or in a
taken care
valley
of.
or on mountains, it's just like just press forward and your character takes care of it. I like the sense of physicality that they've put into this game. The idea of like you feel like you actually have, like, if you're going up a hill to some, like weather station, you feel that climb, even if you're in a vehicle.
Yeah, it's a daunting
and your vehicle
task.
slows down and you're like, oh, I got to use my boost to get up there a little bit. Like that sense of physicality, both of your character and of the terrain and of the world, is interesting. At the same time, I don't know that I've been angrier at a game recently than I was in the first maybe 5 to 10 hours of this game, where I was just like, I just felt like the main thing I was doing when I was going from place to place was just trying to not trip over myself like an idiot.
And think about how
Which, by the way, is essentially the gameplay at that moment in the game. It's it's to keep yourself upright and struggle over hills and through the challenges that are in the world.
And you're not doing anything wrong. That's what it's supposed to be there, and it's not fun.
And this has a negative knock-on effect to combat as well, because I was totally reconfiguring how I approached combat and my mentality to combat. Where, for instance, you mentioned the BTs. Well, a lot of times they'll drag you out of a vehicle if they catch you, and obviously you get sort of mired in the ground in like the mud, and they you can easily drop all your stuff. Well, so what I ended up having to do to sort of reapproach combat is, I might prepare more by consciously dropping my cargo in a certain place. That way I can deal with the BTs and then come back and get my cargo, so it's not just scattering everywhere. Well, that's no fun. I mean, combat is, a big slice of this game, or of any game, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a whole sort of silo that gets negatively affected by, as you're saying, of trying to keep upright in this other segment of the game. So they don't really flow together well in a good way. It's more like I'm having to negatively sort of accommodate the handling to approach the combat, which then makes the combat not fun. And then there's even times where it was like, okay, well, how can I avoid combat? Which, you're going to want to do anyway, because they let you know that, well, this area is heavily patrolled by BTs and whatnot.
And you can use stealth also.
Yeah, and you can use stealth, but negatively approaching it from the sense of, well, maybe I'm just going to run. Maybe I'm just going to opt out of this whole segment of the game entirely because of some of that frustration.
Yeah, and I want to take a quick detour here, if that's all right, because you guys have mentioned on a couple occasions now BTs, which are these sort of spectral monster things that you run into. But this is another thing that on one hand I like and on the other hand I don't, because I think the world that they've created with this game is strange and compelling in a lot of ways. The idea that you've got this post-apocalyptic wasteland that has these weird kind of ghosts and rain that
Timefall,
timefall is what they call it. It's this rain that just makes everything age and decay that it touches.
And by the way, I should point out too, just because you're there, like Sam, through some reason that's a mystery to the player, is able to survive in this world where others cannot.
Well, this is part of it though, and this is part of what I don't like, is that I'm okay with a cool atmosphere and a game that has a lot of weird terms that they're going to throw at you. That stuff's great. But what bothers me about it is you as the player feel out of the loop, right? Let's say in a show like Twin Peaks, if you're Agent Dale Cooper and you're in this town and you're learning about things like the Black Lodge, Dale Cooper is learning all about this stuff with you as a viewer.
Yeah.
Right? And no one in town knows for sure about what's going on, so there's so you feel like you're sort of along for the journey there. What bothers me about this game is you as a player are left out of the loop, because it feels like everyone else knows what the hell is going on and you don't. When they say things like, oh, it's the BTs. Oh, I'll see you on the beach. Oh, Sam, you have dooms, huh? Oh, okay, you're a repatriate or whatever. It's like, what? They kind of fill you in with a glossary on some of this stuff, but it really feels like a lot of the mystery about okay, what is the beach? What does that mean? Is that a physical place? Is that some sort of ethereal place where people exist somehow? And That's a big question that you as a player have, though it seems like everyone else knows the answer to that.
Those things are explained, in the game, but I think the most damning part about it is that it doesn't, sure, it tells you the story and you get some satisfaction from that. But in terms of tying back into the gameplay, there's nods to that, but I don't think they really carry it through in the sense that everybody wants to know, what's with that baby you're carrying? You know what I mean?
Baby, yeah,
baby. There is, a total story behind that. You will understand that. But really, when it comes down to gameplay, you may soothe the baby by literally, moving your controller, rocking it to sleep. And there's some, if it gets really distressed, you won't be able to pick up BTs.
Mm-hmm.
But those are really small gameplay elements that don't really, I think, give you that payoff in the sense that, like, why is this happening? And then maybe if it was tied better into gameplay, you would have a little bit more of a appreciation for it. And then when you get to the story aspect, it would sort of tie through all three of those things. Because, managing BB is not a huge deal, you end up not really caring.
Yeah.
There's a thing, like you mentioned, the beach, and, if you get captured by the BTs in a certain sense, you'll get dragged, and there'll be sort of a second stage of that BT confrontation, which isn't really that interesting, from a combat sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you end up on the beach, which is a physical location, but it's a matter of just sort of, you go with the analog stick, you hold down square, whatever, then you're back in the game. It's not an interesting place, even from like a gameplay perspective. And so therefore, again, when you do get that story payoff, you've not cared this whole time. I'm not going to care at the end when you do explain it to me.
Yeah, for a game that is like thematically, as much as Kojima likes talking about how much it's about connection, a lot of it feels like very alienating to me in some ways, which is strange.
Yeah, I think this would be a good time to talk about something that, like, I think on a positive sense, this game from a production and creative side is stunning, right? Like from the buildings, the landscapes, the graphics, the design of like logos, the characters, the kind of like design pieces all around it are stunning. I mean, like, I literally, when it's like, hey, best direction, I don't love a lot of the gameplay elements. In fact, I have a lot of problems with them in general, but the world,
the world, the atmosphere, the visuals, it's great.
The music, all stunning, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the first time you run into these BTs that we were just discussing, you're like, this is weird, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, like, you're like, this is crazy. And you can, like, there's this weird, like, you can get sucked into the ground and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe someone animated this. Looks so phenomenal. The thing about it is to loop it back to gameplay and to kind of, I think, summarize some of my personal problems is that, like, the BT experience is like stealth through them, at least at the beginning, and like hold your breath. And the little, I don't know.
Odorek?
Yeah, Odorek, the little 5-fingered robot that spazzes out, points them out to you.
It's your scanner.
Your scanner.
Yeah.
That first time, it's like really, really like intense, and you're like, how do I get through this? Or you get captured, and it's all feels great. The problem is the next time I come into it, the reason I feel like, for me, was that I am in this delivery man fantasy, and I look at the BTs almost immediately as like, great, I have to deliver the mail in snow. And then there's these mules who are like the kind of marauders that are out in the world that'll steal things from you and chase you. And the first time you encounter them and you're like, oh my God, I'm being chased. It feels great. Like you're just like, oh my gosh, this is a rush. I got to get away from these guys. I can't get my stuff, even though I don't even really know what I'm carrying on my back. I'm tripping. I'm falling. Like it's all culminating in this like really great rush. And these are the moments when the game feels so good to me, right? And you're like, wow. But then later, I'm like, well, those guys are rain. These guys are snow. Like everything is just a thing in my way of trying to deliver because delivery becomes a job. And it felt like that pretty early to me. And I'd love to hear your opinion on that. That's definitely my next question. But that was the thing that kind of slowed the game down for me because you get to the end and you deliver and they're like, how good are your packages? And you navigate a lot of menus. There's a lot of menu navigation as you're picking missions, what you're going to carry on your back, how you're going to carry it on your back, how you're going to approach things, which is great. It's interesting that the open world, there are a lot of choices how you go to deliver them. But everything along the way, to me, felt like just annoyances which I know they're meant to be like, this is how we make the travel interesting. But what was your take on that from both of you? I'd love to hear.
The one thing I want to point out, let's take an analogy from this game to like a Metal Gear game.
Okay.
Where you could say that in Metal Gear, I want to get to the story, I want the action, and the soldiers, the bad guys in the way are the snow or the rain, right?
Yeah.
Just this thing I have to get through. I think the important difference to draw between those and Death Stranding is that it feels like the soldiers' AI, the way they search for you, the stealth in Metal Gear, feels like a fully fleshed out system, right? That you poke and it responds. And in Death Stranding, those systems, at least where I am in the game, they do not feel like they respond. They feel like you point out, it really does feel just more like an obstacle you sort of have to get over. It's not like you can play around and have a good time like, oh, I'm going to trick this mule into doing this funny thing. It's just like they see you, they come at you, you punch them out, and then you're done.
Yeah.
Or the BTs, you sneak past them, or you throw a grenade at them, or you shoot them, or whatever, and then they're done.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't have that sense of like rewarding experimentation that like something like the Metal Gear series does.
Yeah, and the mules, who are real people, unlike the BTs, they have camps, and I think early on, it's a few tents, it's a few, sort of makeshift things with. There's some supplies there. You might want to go in there, especially early in the game when you haven't, don't have a lot of stuff, and you're like, oh, there's some loot over there. That's great. And as the game goes on, you might see some trucks. They might come after you with more trucks. Maybe the encampments are a little sort of physically bigger, but and I know it's a different game, but unlike, let's say, like an Assassin's Creed where you come into an encampment and it's like, okay, how am I going to get around this place? Where are the watch points? Where's maybe the interesting, items, that sort of draw me into that area? And you see it as almost like a set piece. Like, okay, this is going to be cool. For the next 2 hours, hour, I'm going to like concentrate on this thing. The mule encampments are not like that.
Yeah.
From the beginning of the game towards the end, they change a little bit, but it just becomes something to ignore because you're like, I don't really need to go unless it's like a story related thing of like this item is in the middle of this camp. I'm missing on that. So then it's like you said, it just becomes these guys running around in the environment.
The camps don't feel designed.
Yeah.
You don't get a sense of infiltration.
It takes away from the world too, because you're like, well, why would I go over there? I'm just going to hoof it.
So I'm the earliest, Joe's in the middle, let's say you're at the end. Our analysis of this kind of gameplay loop, do you feel that we're underserving it because it really develops later in the game, that there's a payoff to that play that happens as it goes on? Or, I mean, I know for you, when I talked to you at one point, you were like, this game, 8-ish. You know what I mean? I kind of quizzed you along the way, and it was like, it's probably below an 8. You know what I mean? Like you kind of you slowly slid down for you, right? I don't know if that was due to repetition. I don't know what that like. But how do you feel? Are we misrepresenting the gameplay loop at this point as being this kind of like?
No, I don't think so. And I think two things I want to point out is there are boss battles. There's not as many, and I don't think they're as sort of timely staged as you might be in like a Metal Gear game, where you're used to like, okay, here's Vamp, here's here are those people. They are there, but when you get to them, they're not that interesting gameplay wise in terms of defeating these enemies. Obviously Kojima is known for his boss battles, for coming up with those things. That's a thing. This does not bear that kind of inventiveness or require that kind, or draw that kind of response from you as a gamer. It's just like, okay, I can in a minute I can tell, okay, I've got to do this to defeat this guy, and just loop it, and so that makes those, when you get to them, like, okay, great, here's this thing, boss battle. It's not that interesting. And I think along the way I did get into the loop. I did get into the loop of like, okay, I want to deliver these things. I want to improve my prestige with these people so I can get like a better type of grenade, a better gun, or I might want to build up the world. You can build highways, which are very useful. Like you can
extremely useful.
Yeah, and later on there's zip lines. So it's literally like they just will like physically just zip you. Kind of like a ski lodge or something like that. Just zip you through, which is great. And you're like, okay, where am I going to put them? They can only be right now 300 meters apart. I'm going to put it on this mountain. And then that way, when I come back, it's going to take no time at all. I can avoid this BT area. I might help some other people. Like,
Yeah.
oh, somebody else put a zip line. Oh, that's great. I'll do off of that. I mean, you do get invested and you get into that loop, but it's not really a super different loop than, as you're coming out towards the end than it is, at the beginning. It's not like you'll get some different equipment, but I really don't think your attitude towards the loop is going to change on anything you see or play.
Yeah.
And again, for as mixed as I am, like for every part of this game, there's I like this and I don't like this.
Yeah.
But for all of that, I really cannot stop playing it.
Yeah.
Which I think speaks to that overall just sort of like atmosphere, inventiveness, and novelty of the experience too. This is one that this is a game that I would probably recommend that if you can, everyone should at least try it, play a few hours of it.
I kind of feel the same way too. I was like, I was with you to go on my. I for the first 7 or 8 hours, I'm like, I gotta know what's going on. I mean, I was just I rolled my eyes at some of the story elements and some of the storylines. I was like, oh my god, this is juvenile. Mm-hmm. But I was like, but I want to know. I got to take this thing there. I'm going. I'm going to take care. I'm going to deal with this. And there are those moments like you climb a mountain. You're like, whew, I climbed that mountain.
Yeah.
That was cool. And you look back and you go, sweet. Or you're walking across a field and there's times when the music just kind of comes in and the camera pulls back a little bit. It feels so good. You're like,
there are a lot of moments like that. I love them.
And they're, I mean, that points to once again, there are design moments that are truly spectacular, right, in the game, and stunning. It was just when I started to feel them just start to grind on me a little bit, that's when I started to back away. But I do feel like when you see some of the story elements in the beginning, when you start to hear what the crazy talk coming out of Del Toro, and just just like this baby's gonna do what? Why am I plugged in this baby? Like these are questions that we've been avoiding. I think we're trying to make this a spoil, avoid any spoilers. So there's things that you just kind of have to experience. You want me to do what in this place? I create grenades. How? Right? You need to kind of experience them. But I do think there is a very real thing of if you do not buy into this delivery fantasy, it will wear on you. But I have watched people, and that's the thing I've said about this game. It's a weird, and I'm glad it exists, by the way. I'd like to point that out too. It's a cool, interesting piece of video game art that some people are going to walk up to and say, genius. This is, I can't believe how much this says about me and who I am as a person, right? And other people look at it and go it's a can sitting on a chair. This doesn't make any sense to me, and not to say that there's anything wrong with not getting it, but that there is, you either enjoy the experience, you enjoy the ride, or it will start to take away from its greater moments.
I mean,
is that accurate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might see my score 7 and you might think, wow, that's just an average, that's a bland game. It's not a 7 for lack of trying. I mean, the gameplay systems, a lot of them are, nested smartly and they build on each other, and it's a well-made game. And like I said, with the production values, the story is there. You will get explanation for the things. It's not a game, it's not a lazy game by any means. So like I said, you don't look at the 7 and be like, oh yeah, that's just a totally average game. It's a 7 for other reasons, for the payoffs it doesn't give, as we've been talking about. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But again, maybe, I'm trying to your point, it's not a boring game. It's not a game that's going to be like, oh yeah, this is just a totally, lazy, nothing's there. Yeah. It's just, it definitely tries. It tries.
I feel like even as mixed as we all are on it, and, even with a 7 score, this is one of those cases where, I mean, I can't promise anything, but I think when we sit down at the end of the year to talk about our top 50 games of the year, I think Death Stranding is still in that conversation.
I would agree. I mean, once again, I would point out, because the delivery thing started to wear on me, doesn't mean it's going to wear on everyone. We've had other people here in the office that have been really enjoying it. You know what I mean? It sings to people and some of the, some of the things that I sometimes go like, oh, that's just Kojima being weird. They go like, oh, that's Kojima. He's saying something interesting. Like
This is him at his best.
Yeah. And so I can see all those perspectives. I was not shocked on November 1 when I saw people giving it super high scores. I knew there would be people that it sang to that way. But I think it is one of those things that I think that's what I really liked about. I thought you did a great job, Kato, in that you tried to make sure not only like how it affected you and what mattered to you as you played it, but you took a critical eye to the systems. You took a critical eye, and I think challenged convention. I think people sometimes are a little scared to be like, oh, Kojima made this weird thing, and it's like that's what Kojima does. You know what I mean? It's okay to say that he took chances and some of them worked or didn't work. And I think you did a good job of addressing a lot of those issues
Thank you.
in the review. Which was there. So, what do I not know that I need to know about Death Stranding? What are our final thoughts here on this experience?
There's one thing I wanted to share real quick. Sorry, Kato. So because it's not up to release yet, they turned off the servers, or at least the servers have been intermittent right now. So those of us who have copies have to play online if we're going to do it, or I have to play offline, and I have been surprised at how I've been enjoying the offline experience for this game. There are for as much of this game that is about like that other player's connection, about leaving something for someone else, about finding another player's bridge out in the wild. I've talked to Kato about this. One of the things that was really bugging me about the game is there's just a bunch of dumbass signs everywhere.
There's a lot of trash from the other people.
Players place for every nice, cool, helpful bridge that you find that you're like, oh, I'm so glad that's there. There are 10 stupid signs or post boxes or some crap you just don't need that feel like litter in your world.
Yeah, I agree. Because it is a beautiful world, and sometimes there's like all these towers and all these like post boxes and everything built in.
So you want like the Depeche Mode "Enjoy the Silence" video. Right? Where he's just trekking up the mountain with his lawn chair to get to a nice peaceful place.
There is something to be said that when you go into a pristine land, I think that's what he's trying to preserve, by the way. That's his design idea of like when it's not connected, that you go in, that it feels more like I'm walking through Norway.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Kind of thing. And it has that kind of alien feeling landscape to it. Whereas like once it's populated, it has definitely a different vibe.
Yeah. Though at the same time, I can't recommend that anyone actually play offline because what you also lose, you lose that litter in the world, which I love, but then you also lose that sense of bonding or community that Kato was talking about. You can't, because when that's the case, you know that any bridge you make is just for you. You know that any road you build is just for you. And you can't do the thing where it's like, hey, another player dropped this piece of cargo here. I'm going to pick that up and I'm going to finish that delivery. And those are some great moments too. So
and you both share experience from that, by the way.
Yeah. So I want like a middle ground between the full offline and the full online experience, right? Where I can sort of interact with the world in some ways, but not necessarily just see, all the trash people have thrown around in the world.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And the other thing too is that, I will say this. You walk up and go like, oh man, I got to cross this big river and go, you're like, somebody put a bridge here.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times when that connected world really feels great because you truly are thankful because by the way, that's the other thing this game does a pretty good job. You know how hard it is to cross that river.
Yeah.
Right. You just like, I don't want to do that. And so that's part of the delivery trauma that you've experienced that you get so excited about that.
And I think the game definitely tries to preserve that feeling because, as you said, when you bring things onto the network, then all of a sudden it pops in and says, okay, this area or this node is on the network, and now because of that, we're going to show you all the player stuff. So certainly when you backtrack to some area you've already put on the network, the stuff is all going to be there. But as you're pushing forward and you're going to places that are not on the network, finding that rope, those isolated ropes and stuff like that, I think it's like the instancing is a lot more restricted because again, you're not on the network. So I think it really tries to preserve that found feeling. But just, when you're backtracking, it's going to be
And some of those things you find in the world, like early on, are from NPCs, like people who are around the world that have left things that you're like, you come across and you're like, oh, that's the guy I got this mission from. It's not like some of them are not real humans that they've been placed to help you and kind of like give that connection to the NPCs in the world, which is cool too, right?
And I think that's more in the early part of the game because it's like set to to sort of give you an idea of how this is going to work once we like connect you to the other players, kinds of stuff.
All right. Well, thank you both. That is a very interesting conversation.
I feel like there's still even more to say. But
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have to end it here. We can go forever. People have asked for more. I'm the one that likes to try to keep it pretty short and concise.
I mean, there are things that as we get further away from the actual launch day, I think there's a lot of maybe some meta things and other themes and stuff we can get into. I mean, because we don't want to spoil the game for anybody. So
Yeah, I mean, I think there's things to talk about here that are, like you said, they're story based. But I feel like that story, a lot of the things that he tried to say, like I kind of feel bad. I mean, that's what kind of why I started with that whole Trump connection thing. Was that like I'd love to sit and just analyze, like, did he do that? Was that possible? Did he really make a statement? Did he not really make a statement? Is Strand game this whole new genre, or is it just a bunch of other genres stuck together?
Yeah,
sure. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, you can call it that, but I mean, I've seen things like this before. So I think there's a lot of questions of like where he did or didn't find success, but I do worry that some of those start to...
Yeah, we can't talk about all that stuff yet.
Yeah, but I do think it's interesting to think about and look to those pieces that are there.
Maybe we have another Death Stranding segment in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think especially when I'm really excited. Once again, I like I said, I do have my problems with the game, but I was so excited to read things on November 1, and I'm going to watch I'm going to put 2 streams up. I'm going to have multiple streams going of watching the community, content creators. I can't wait to see their reactions. I can't wait to see the reactions of chat when people are like, what just happened? I think I want to see it, right? So I'm really excited about that, and I would love to discuss this game again at a later time, but I want to be respectful of people's experiences that are coming, and I think there's a lot that you need to see. I know we've talked about a lot, but you need to see for yourself. And I think that goes back to what Joe said earlier, and I've said to other people, which I think is funny because people react to it. They go like, okay, for me, I go, I don't really like the game that much, but you need to play the first 10 hours. Like, why are you making me play 10 hours of a game you don't like? You know what I mean? I'm like, well, you might like it. And, this might sing to you. And you need to see, like, I kind of feel like you need to see it. Like you said earlier, like, you need to see this. If you play games, there's kind of you need to look at this.
Yeah.
You need to see it. And now maybe you can just watch it on someone else's stream or something like that too. But you got to see this.
Yeah. And I can't even say I don't like it. Like, I think generally I come on the positives. I think I do like it, but I want to like it so much more.
Yeah, there could have been more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the most... You two are much more positive than I am. Like I said, there's a spectrum to it.
Well, I mean, that's the things everybody always asks me, like, so at the end, how many hours did you put into that? And, the counter was like at 70 plus hours. Maybe there was some pauses in there, but, and then, people roll their eyes and be like, I can't believe you delivered packages for that long. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a lot, but it's like, I wanted to finish the game,
Yeah.
like I said, I got into the loop and, I have critical things against the game, but like, sure, I spent a lot of hours playing that game and I don't regret it at all.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, thank you both. Really do appreciate it. Death Stranding is out
Friday on the 8th.
Okay, Friday the 8th.
Wait, 7th?
7th? 8th?
5, 6.
Eighth.
8th, yes.
Thank you, Leo.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Boy.
We're professionals.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
are
We really know what
professionals.
we're talking about.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so watch for the game. It's coming out soon. Hopefully you're excited. Hopefully we helped you understand what the game is and what it's going to bring. So thank you very much. Next segment, we're going to get into all the things Blizzard, and I believe first up will be Diablo 4. So hang in there. Hello and welcome back to the Game Informer Show. This is our next of many Blizzard-based segments that we have coming up. Today I am joined by Ben Reeves,
Hello.
Jeff Cork,
Hello.
and Dan. Dan, I'm trying to think. Dan, what do you do, Dan? Jan the Jacket Man. Jan the Jacket Man.
That
Jan
works.
The Jacket Man. Sorry, I got that wrong.
Got
I
a
like
real
it.
smooth vibe.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. Well, I mean, look at that jacket. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Dan
I
Tack.
saw that on The Running Man. Remember Richard Dawson?
Yeah.
Was wearing that.
Welcome, you guys. So you guys were the team that, went out to see Diablo IV, which is our first subject here.
Yeah,
Cork, yes.
And Dan actually went later.
Well, I snuck into one of their sessions as well.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I wasn't going to go and not see it.
Okay, excellent.
They had to rip him away from the computers. Like, Dan, you got to check out WoW.
Well, I mean, it was. I mean, I think everyone here was really excited when we heard that Diablo IV was coming. I think it's something that people have known for a long time that it was going to happen at some point. But you're like, like I think Immortal, the mobile game, throwed people off the scent a little bit last year, and so a lot of excitement. So.
And then we thought nothing can temper everyone's excitement and enthusiasm for this, and we were not wrong.
Yes, exactly. Yes. There was definitely a wet blanket thrown, but we'll discuss that later. So, Diablo IV, tell me about it. What are the highlights of Diablo IV? Let's go with Cork, who wrote the cover feature for the new issue that is out now.
Oh my goodness! Well, it seems like the biggest thing they did, and I'm going to sound like I'm just parroting their marketing, but it certainly is true, and there's a reason why they keep saying it. Is it is kind of marking a return to darkness for the franchise. I know that when Diablo III was introduced, people were somewhat surprised by what they thought was a complete 180 in terms of the art style. Like traditionally, it's been a gothic, dark game, and Diablo III was a little brighter, more vibrant, kind of drew from the same color palette as WoW, which threw people for a loop a little bit. Are you okay there? Are you just savoring my every word?
I mean, yeah, Diablo 3 has some dark stuff.
It absolutely does.
But you're right.
But the initial showings, I think, were what kind of threw people off.
Well, we could talk about, I think people over-hated Diablo 3, right?
100%.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it was over. Like, the initial launch of, I think Reaper of Souls is like the writing of the ship.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, visually, though. Like, there were all those, Photoshops of people, drawing rainbows in the background.
Well, that's Whimsyshire. There's literal rainbow land in that game, right?
That was in response to their people's reactions, though, I think, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, there were a problem with the shop. There were all kinds of things at the beginning of Diablo 3 that were certainly you were like, why are you doing this? Right? Yeah, you had a thing figured out. But I do think it's funny that we talk about oh, thank God we're getting away from that horrible Diablo 3, which is
Diablo 3 is fun as hell.
I would agree. I'm glad we just covered that topic very quickly.
Yeah.
I was a fan as well, even though I agree it was different in certain ways, but I certainly didn't get drawn down as much by it.
I think to Dak's point, though, Reaper of Souls certainly was a nice course correction, and some of those later levels and some of the later worlds, super, super dark.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't I don't like the way these flayed corpses are sitting on this blackened marble floor.
You're still floating, fighting bloated demons, and they're popping and spiders are crawling out. It's still pretty dark.
Exactly.
But this one is managed to be darker in a way that also doesn't turn me off, or it doesn't feel super drab. There's still some color variety there.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It's very gothic and darks.
Yeah, I think that for me is the big difference. There are fantastical elements, I think, in Diablo 3 that do not exist in the core, hardcore Diablo aesthetic. Just the dark desert, the dark jungle. These are different from the things that were portrayed in Diablo 3. They're a little got more you go to heaven. Come on.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So we're going dark.
We're going dark.
Yes.
And I think a lot of it is just kind of, it seems like they're pulling elements that people liked from just the Diablo franchise as a whole. So they're kind of reworking the way that runes are presented. In the last game, they were kind of a modifier on existing skills. And here it's more of a Diablo 2 thing where it's an item that you equip. It's not quite as... Seems like it was a very obscure system that they had in Diablo 2 where you had rune words that you would combine into shout phrases.
right, and that would create a unique effect or item, and that's not what you're doing here, or at least what we've seen. Now you sort of create your own special effects by having a trigger rune and an effect rune, and they work together to create. I'll drink a potion and it'll cause an explosion. I'll do this and it'll do that.
They're trying to create more customization.
Yeah,
For sure. And I think another big change is that they're kind of getting away from the emphasis on set items being the end game, which I welcome, because it seems like you always need something to chase in a loot-based game like this, but it seems like a lot of those you kind of got penned into a particular build. There was very little variety or flexibility once you got a set of armor. There was still a little bit of variation you could get into, but I mean, there was clearly, this is what this is for.
Yeah.
And you deviate from that at your own peril. Whereas this, they're focusing there still will be set items, but I think we talked to the systems designer, David Kim, and he was saying that it's primarily about those set items guiding players to learning about the game, and then it opens up for the end game where you're like more about finding powerful legendary and mythic items, which were like a tier above legendaries that have up to 4 special legendary affixes.
Okay.
So there's a lot more variety and customization there. I'm really excited about it, I think, after spending a couple of hours playing it.
Okay, so they've addressed that they're changing some things about the loop, having these kind of like open world kind of shared spaces. Can you explain some of the like more gameplay changes? I mean, we all know the classic, kill, loot, repeat. Kind of essence of Diablo, which is so a fantastic loop. Love it. Experience, grind, go. But what else have they done to kind of expand the game?
Well, I think the biggest change to the Diablo formula, if you will, is just the introduction of an overworld where everything is connected. So it's not like discrete little pockets of action that you use a waypoint to travel between. It's more of a you could still use those to fast travel, but you could also just hoof it, and it seamlessly blends from one area to the other without any loading or anything like that. So even it extends as far as when you get into a dungeon, for instance. Usually you have an objective where it's like in adventure mode, like go to the second floor and kill all the spiders, right?
Yeah.
So normally you'd go to the dungeon, the first floor, and you walk around and there's randomly generated dungeon, and then there's a little doorway at the end. You go into that, now I'm on the second floor. This is more of there's a ledge, you hop down, now you're on the second floor. There's not like a loading and then loading back out. It's all like, they're trying to keep the illusion of like, this is all one big interconnected world that you're exploring rather than little pockets of action that you're loading between.
There's areas where you can climb up ladders or like climb down vines. Like there's a lot of like verticality to the areas in the random areas too, which is impressive. I'm like, man, I don't know.
I was going to say, so like even keys
are
are seamless like that.
yeah,
That's awesome.
And I think what's interesting too, though, is that it's not just like you're playing with your party. So there are going to be parts where you're in the open world and you will see other players, which is going to be a bit of an adjustment for some players, possibly.
And PvP in that?
There is going to be PvP. Yeah. They're not really diving into that. They are fully aware, we asked them about that things were promised in Diablo 3 that maybe were not delivered.
Gotcha.
So they're making a point to bring about some kind of PvP that is...
It will be consensual, just so people know.
Yeah, you're not going to run around and get ganked for your boots.
Okay.
It did kind of remind me of the overworld of Destiny in a way, is kind of that MMO light aspect of you're in this overworld and you see other people. But it's not going to be a ton of people you'll see. It's still Diablo. They still want to kind of keep that to a minimum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they seem to be very aware of the fact that people have an expectation for Diablo, and it is not running around and being in a like crowd of people. So they want to have moments where they will like reduce the number of potential players you run into, and then like if you run into one of the world bosses, for instance, they're going to want a lot of people to be able to engage with that at the same time because they are very difficult.
And we fought one of those world bosses, and it was like 12 people joined our party, and like it was kind of fun to see all the effects going off at once, and like trying to take down this monster who they were saying internally, like that guy, they'll have like 12 people at him, and like they'll have trouble taking him down.
Because he will one-shot you if you stand into it.
Yes.
And I talked to, I found a lot of cool things out interviewing Alan Adham at the show, and I specifically asked about this. They have a whole team that just does world boss stuff. Like that's all they do, and it's about getting those raid experiences tailored. But at the same time, they want to at the same time please those Diablo fans who don't want to play with anybody, and that's fine too. That's why they have the whole instance dungeon system, which, if I'm correct, and when I'm understanding, it's going to be somewhat similar to the map system in Path of Exile, where you'll find a key that has different modifiers on it, and you'll get a dungeon with like all these different modifiers to like loot and enemies and all kinds of other stuff. So that'll keep the end game progression pretty strong.
Yeah, and you know what it is before you use it too, which is super helpful. I think with the bosses and the world bosses at the same time, like they've introduced a staggering mechanic where you've got 2 meters, you've got their health, which, you're not going to believe this, Andy. When that's reduced, this boss goes down.
What?
You've also got a staggering meter, whereas you do things that normally are like crowd control effects or things that don't output a lot of damage. It's building that up, and then once that's up, the boss will, you won't believe this either, stagger. So like a weird animation, depending on what it is, like they might break off, like on this one world boss we fought, it'll break off one of the blades on its wrist, so it won't do as much damage. So like if you're a character,
It's an opportunity to do other things.
it's great for characters. Like if you've got a build that is mostly about like a support role, you still feel like you're able to contribute in one of these big battles where it's like, oh great, I'm more like about slowing down enemies, and I'm just going to sit here and watch my friends do all this stuff.
And it seems like I've seen those stagger mechanics in other games, and it's just like, well, this is an opportunity to get more hits on them or maybe do critical damage. But like here, you stagger some of these bosses, and it like physically changes their form. Like you were saying, remove the claw, and then like their attack range is much shorter. So like there's a lot of value in staggering people, it seems like.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Okay, so there's overworld bosses. What's the scale? Explain the scale to me of this kind of overworld. Is it set in stone, or like all the dungeon entrances set where I go and I walk and I'm familiar with the landscape?
Yes.
Like, okay, so
the entrances are set, but once you get inside of those are where they're kind of shuffle the deck a little bit, and it's like a procedurally generated location based on a tile set that you know what it's going to be.
So would that change? I mean, typically in the game, I would like be in the town, talk to the blacksmith, get everything ready to go, blah, blah, blah. Team goes, let's take the gate, let's go to the dungeon, let's go. You're saying that now that the gameplay loop is going to find me where we're going to be like, we're going to like walk out the town gates and start traveling because we hope to like stumble across these world bosses? Are they random?
I think you'll do
Are
that. The world bosses, at least the one that we saw, was always in the same spot.
Yeah.
And it was triggered by a countdown clock. They're still working out how exactly they're going to like be in the world. So they didn't. I asked like, will there be something where like people are able to like coordinate like, hey, if we all go to these shrines and activate them within a certain period of time all across the world, will one of them be summoned? And they're like, oh, it's a good idea. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
There are quests too. There's like side quests. You'll meet people in town, and they'll say, "Hey, go check out this shrine, or bless this thing, or bring this back to me." And like some of that stuff might be connected to bosses in the world, or other things that you'll encounter. I think they'll steer you towards that stuff.
But what motivates me here? Is there like experience to grind out there? Is it better out there? Or is it better to be in a dungeon? I mean, what draws me to this place as a player?
So we only have the demo to go on, but the world boss was definitely the most loot-centric thing there. He dropped like 10 rares and a legendary for me. So I did ask, what's going to stop people from just going from game to game and farming the same boss over and over? And they didn't have an answer. So I'm sure they're still working on that system. But the idea, or at least as it's been presented, is that those keys...
Debuff is always the answer on that, by the way.
Sure. And that's the easy solution, right?
Yep.
You can only get world boss loot in an X timer. But what it seems to me is that those key dungeons are going to be sort of the answer to that endgame progression loop. Where you're trying to find higher tier keys that will give you... It's sort of like Rifts, but a little bit more advanced. I mean, it's the same philosophy of going into these things over and over, but you're going to have the choice of different dungeons. You're going to have to really consider what modifiers are going in. Like, you're going to be like, okay, this dungeon has enemies that do... This is conceptual. Like, they haven't announced anything of this. This is comparing it to some other systems that other games use. Like, let's say the dungeon key rolls with like all the enemies here do plus 500% cold damage. You're gonna check out your loot box and be like, I got some cold resist gear. I'm gonna rock it in with that one, and then use that to find even more potentially higher keys, which will give you even more loot, etc.
Yeah.
It is funny, I said amongst my friends that I play WoW with that Diablo got Mythic Plus keys, and essentially WoW got Diablo Tower kind of thing. It's like kind of a switch of like different things that you had done in different games that are kind of coming. I mean, is that accurate as kind of our... Well,
they are always learning from each other on those teams. So yeah, I think I don't know if the tower is quite Diablo-esque. We'll talk about that later.
Yes,
I think,
of course.
But that's sort of right. It's roguelike, right? So it's got that randomized aspect to it. Yeah. And it doesn't go full it's not full MMO. It's MMO light for sure. And the open world is like crazy. You don't have to do any quests if you don't want to. I specifically asked if you could just like walk from the front of the game to the end of the game if you wanted to. Assuming you're not going to get killed by anything, right?
Yeah.
Which you will. But you could. Like, it's not gated by anything, apparently.
Yeah, except those enemies are super hard.
Right, you're gonna get, in reality, you would get one shot by something along the way. But let's say that they didn't kill you, right? Like,
Yeah. Just like there's nothing stopping you from walking to San Francisco right now.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's technically an open world.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Except
This
for
world
Nevada.
is an open world. Confirmed. I
You'll
love
get
it.
killed in Nevada.
Did you know that we're in one contiguous open world?
If you see it, you could go there, Dan Tack.
That's right.
Believe it or not.
So can you tell me some more about the classes that you played? I mean, everyone played a different
Yeah.
class. And Leo, did you play any different classes?
Yeah, we took turns playing all of them. We've got Barbarian and Sorceress gameplay up right now on GameInformer.com and YouTube.com/GameInformer, and Druid's coming up tomorrow, Friday.
Ooh,
Get ready,
nice.
Druid. What was your favorite, Leo?
My favorite was Druid. It's a classic pick, but so many interesting abilities. There's that big boulder move that pushes enemies physically. That was very satisfying, especially when we were all three playing as druids and just doing nothing but boulders.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
It was great just watching these guys who'd been giving us a little bit of grief earlier, just all of them getting continuously stun locked against the cave walls and everything like that. Yeah, the Druid's super fun.
Druid's cool because like you rapidly transform into like a werewolf and you're slashing at people with your claws, and then you can like transform into a bear and like you do this like ground stomp and like does area damage, and then you have like tornado magic, or it was called Cataclysm, which like summons these like little tornadoes, and all three of us were playing and we all set ours off at once, and it was just a madhouse, like destructive, like yeah, it was insane
And beautiful.
and really cool looking.
So not everyone's just going to be a barbarian.
I mean, I played all of the classes as well, and the druid was the standout. But you know, everybody's got their own thing, and it's hard to tell in a demo slice, like,
Right,
you know
'cause-
what's going to be, you know, the later on. I'm sure that they all have cool stuff too.
Yeah.
But
Well,
druid, I think there's a lot more attraction to the druid too, because we haven't really played anything like him for a very long time.
Very flashy.
Although I did really like the barbarian. If that's your class, that's your go-to thing. There's a lot to like here. It feels like, for lack of a better word, very visceral. Like those impacts just like hit really well. I would swear there was like rumble on that mouse because it just like feels so good to like attack people.
Gotcha.
Having the dedicated two-hander slot for your secondary abilities is really cool. Like to do those big swings.
Yeah, the barbarian's all about switching up weapons, so you can like attach a certain weapon to one of your moves, and so he'll use that weapon. He's like a walking weapons rack, is how they described him. And so he has all these weapons, and you're like, he or she is using all these weapons in different ways.
And there's
like,
a point. There's a point in the world boss where I was only using one specific weapon I had because it had a really strong crowd control ability, and we were trying to get it to stagger. So it was cool to be able to switch up in the moment like that without even having to redo your build or anything.
Yeah.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah. So they have the 3 characters they've announced, and they said the game will ship with 5, which I'm hoping Witch Doctor returns, because I really enjoyed the
So let's take guesses. Let's do guesses on the
All
other
right.
two.
It's either Witch Doctor or Necromancer. They've got to have some kind of like pet class.
I feel like they know people love the Necromancer. I feel like there's more love for the Necromancer. At least maybe that's my own personal bias, but
Yeah, I feel like we'll get Necromancers. Necromancer, no. At the end of the day, I feel like the starting classes are going to be, I think the other two we're going to get are Assassin and Paladin. Those are my two guesses
Yeah.
for the other two.
What was the God? I embarrassed.
Because we
I
have
can't remember.
they got to bring the other Diablo 2 one back, right? So Assassin was that one. That'll take care of the Demon Hunter slot.
What was the Archer class in the first?
The Amazon.
Amazon.
is really cool. God,
Yeah.
I'd love to see her back too.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to get more than 5 eventually. Like,
Oh, of
I
course,
feel like
yeah.
we're going to get dedicated expansions
Yep.
with 2 characters each. Man, I'm just guessing based on
Yeah.
Diablo 2 here.
And then also like an element that we did not get to see with hands-on, but they showed in the gameplay trailer at BlizzCon, was the fact that there are mounts in the game now.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, that's what kind of gives it. I mean, I'm super intrigued by. I mean, personally, by the open world. I want that to be really interesting. I want that. I know it's kind of. I want that to have that kind of MMO feel to it. You know what I mean? And I love like your kind of thing about it being like kind of like the Destiny Tower. You know what I mean? When you see other people in the village, it feels a little bit more alive, a little bit more vibrant. That things are going on there rather than just the people in your party kind of doing things and setting things up. So I think that's pretty interesting.
And that speaks to another factor that they're bringing back, which I think I don't know what to think about it right now. We have the trading, player-to-player trading is in, and that's a wild thing to bring back to the game. I don't know, you know, they're working to make it so it's cool. Like there's buying on trade stuff. It's gonna be wild.
Yeah.
And they're not calling it an auction house, I don't think, right?
No, they're not.
So
I mean, I
no-
love the
no plans
idea
there.
of being able to meet more players in there and be able to find more adventures. That is definitely one. You know, hey, I'm doing this dungeon solo. Hey, look, there's another guy in here. Let's deal with this, right? Like, I love that idea if they can do.
So
things
yeah,
like
that's sort of
that.
the concept. Like if you want to just play with random people, you'll go out into the wild areas and take on world bosses or world events. And then if you've got your group and you want to go cut your teeth on something in a dungeon, you group up and go into the instance.
Or you go into the dungeon solo too. If you're an antisocial guy, you're not going to worry about like going in there and there's already somebody who's gone just ahead of you and killed everyone, unless you want that.
It sounds like you speak from experience there, Jeff Gord.
Yeah, I heard about you walking in and seeing all the cool
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
that
yeah,
we
that's
left
right.
behind. But oh well.
So there's no release date on this title, and they've said that it's going to be on the console, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC.
Right.
We can also maybe assume if there's no release date that it's probably going to be on the new gen consoles that
that-
are probably on the horizon,
Presumably.
right?
Pretty safe assumption.
So,
Yeah.
speaking of that, like, I mean, how did you feel about the graphic fidelity, the things like that? I mean, that opening trailer they made was insane.
Yes.
So, but the game itself, how do you feel about the graphics, where they're going? I mean, obviously we know it's dark in
Yeah.
tone, but like as far as like
I think
the
thing
way it
that-
looks.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me is just like there's a lot of really flashy effects, particularly if you're playing as like a sorceress, where you're using like lightning magic and everything like that. And they do a really great job with the lighting and some of these environments, like you're in this dark cave because it's a cave.
Yeah.
And things are getting lit up in little pockets and flashes in a way that are like far and away better looking than in Diablo 3 or previous Diablo games. So I mean, it's a really nice looking game.
To touch on that really quick, like, yeah, I think that's something that I kind of like. I think they're gonna, like light radius is a thing that might matter again in this game.
Yeah.
I get that impression. That's obviously I'm speculating a little bit, but that's how I feel. Like there's going to be really dark places that you're not going to see anything without having light radius being a useful skill, useful ability is really cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that to see how that works.
I will also say a game like this where the camera's so pulled back can get away with lower fidelity on the models. But at the start of this demo, there's a cutscene that transitions seamlessly to gameplay. It's an in-engine cutscene where you see the character moving around. And I don't know if they hide a model switch or something, but it looks gorgeous, and then it goes right into the game.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And they said they're going to have more stuff like that because they want you to sort of like get that feel of like this is the character you're playing and like give you a close up look at this guy or girl.
So let's talk a little bit. Like the market's different. You know, like when Diablo and Diablo 2 happened, they didn't have as much competition out there. Do you see some of the things the choices they've made as like answers to some of the competitions? Because I mean, there are games out there that are doing the Diablo type thing with a lot of character customization, a lot of like pretty insane builds and like ways that you can make your character do, you know, this fireball, or it's like a Contra 3-split fireball. You can really do a lot of things. How have they addressed this kind of market, or do you think they're sticking to their guns? What is the reaction that you feel that Diablo 4 brings to the current marketplace?
I think like everybody else, they examine the current market and take what they like and leave the rest. So, I mean, it's pretty clear that they may have been inspired by the map system from Path of Exile in terms of those key dungeons to create those kind of experiences. But I don't feel like the abilities are going to be like some of the other market games. Like, I don't think you're going to get anything like tying 4 skills together to create totems that cast other skills. Like that's, I think that's a little bit too out of scope for what Diablo is.
They're going to stick to their guns in that regard. They're
But they're still like they still have like talent and skill trees and stuff like that. So there's still more choices here than 3
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
There's still more customization there. They know players want that, and I think it's really impossible to tell the scope of how deep they're going to go until we actually get
create some builds.
right.
Yeah,
That's the thing. Like
exactly,
it's really tough to like. Here's your demo character. Go kill some stuff. That's not going to give me the ability to really tell what it looks like
Yeah.
later on.
But your initial reaction is you want to play a crap ton of this game, right? You know what I mean? Like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I mean, you guys are all
Certainly.
sold, right? I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
Leo?
It was a bummer to have to stop. And every time we had to change characters too, it was like, oh, I just lost everything I became attached to.
I had a few friends at BlizzCon that they literally, I'm like, hey, you want to go check out the new other, like, you know, new stuff? They're just like, no, I'm getting back in line for Diablo. And they just did that all day.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if it's a good ride at Disneyland, you know, why not?
Yeah.
Why not do that? No reason to go do the teacups. Stay
That's what
where
I'm
you're
saying.
at, right?
The moment-to-moment gameplay just feels really good. Like, and I'm excited for the stuff, long-term in-game stuff. Seems like they got it all kind of figured out there. But even just like second to second, you're having a good time.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see. I know we asked them about them, and they're still a little hesitant to talk about it, but they were talking about it like they don't want this to become any kind of pay-to-win system, but there will be some kind of cosmetic stuff coming in the future.
Yeah.
And I really am hoping, and they seem sensitive to this, that it isn't just like, oh, you will never have a cool-looking or weird-looking character unless you buy the stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I hope they don't go full Fortnite on it
yeah.
in that way.
Yeah.
And one of the really interesting things that I talked about them with was the fact that they're exploring season-to-season meta progression. So that
Yes.
whatever that seems to be, I
Yeah.
have no idea what that is,
Yeah.
but that's something they're exploring. So that way, you know, it's not just I play my season and then that character is like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it for them. I got a new one next season. There's something to take with you. I have
Maybe
no
those
idea what.
mythics or whatever they talked about, that kind of next level.
That would be pretty insane to carry that over.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but something, anything, right? We'll see.
Similarly, I'd asked if there's going to be like a Paragon system, and they said that they like what that brought. They thought it may have gotten a little too powerful, so they're looking into it. Like a lot of the stuff, it just seems like they're still feeling out conceptually what Diablo 4 is going to be. So things are not locked into stone, carved into stone.
I mean,
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know if that changed since they did say Paragon was in when I talked to him. So, but maybe they will be dialing back what it offers. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, that is. I always enjoy Diablo, and that's the thing. I never really got into seasons. I know people that do, but I love that weird end game where the dungeons, you're just turning it into just like churning through.
Oh, it's the best.
ridiculous amounts of enemies and like creating a build that you're kind of spamming powers to some degree, but there's something satisfying in that is like one of the great things that Diablo does, and people who've not played the whole game don't ever get to experience. And that's, I think, something that Paragon brings, and those like kind of upper end tiers. And the thing that drives you, like you said, like those sets, you're like, this set's stupid, until you're like, oh my God, in this build, this is going to own. You know, and once you see the examples of where they go, and I like that there's going to be more items and more opportunities to create more interesting builds, because I do think the builds felt a little stale at the end of 3.
And well, yeah, because at the end of 3, you've got the stuff, you've got your slots accounted for, and basically you're just trying to get those ancient primals, like which are the god rolls. You got to find the good ones.
Yeah.
But it's still a nice like loot treadmill, but I think they're trying to work it out so that you don't have like to force a slot to be this one item.
yeah.
And they're not trying to turn it into an esport.
Nope.
Or are they?
Well, PvP, we'll see.
There is PvP, which is going to be interesting. I don't think they're trying to esport it, but I did talk a little bit about like, the watchability of the game. I'm like, this is Diablo. We all love it. But I mean, you're just going to a room and pressing one button and watching everything die. Like, how do you make that a more watchable experience? And they said, this will be the most watchable of the Diablos. Obviously, that's sort of a meaningless statement, but
Not everything needs to be watched.
Right.
Just play the game.
Something should be played.
Very smart.
yeah, I mean, I think we're all in the same camp here that we're going to play a lot of this.
Yeah.
It is fun. It's fun to talk about, but it's also too. It's like nothing that we've discussed, good or bad, has changed my mind. I want to play Diablo 4. I'm so sold on this just from the history of the series, and like super excited. And I'm glad to see them try to bring back some old things, and I like them trying new things. I'd love to see more experimentation. Actually, to tell you the truth.
I was also really happy to hear that they are big fans of elements of Diablo 3 as well. So it's not like there's just a kind of a half-hearted like, Diablo 3, we blew it, but we're really going back to Diablo 2. Like they're oh no, we really liked adventure mode. That was like a really kick-ass start of like what the end game of Diablo 4 is going to be like.
Yeah, so in a way, they really just made the whole game adventure mode. I mean, if you think about it, right? Like that's because you don't have to do any of the quests if you don't want. You just do your thing. It's go for it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you all. I appreciate it. So that's our Diablo 4 talk. Coming up next, we're going to go into Overwatch 2. And then over that, we're going to do some WoW Shadowlands and some Hearthstone. And at the end, we're going to have an interview with... hold on, let me get my notes so I get the names right. We're going to have an interview with Liam Esler and David Gaider for Chorus, an adventure musical from Summerfall Studios, which is just hit its fundraising goals, and they're going for the stretch goals. And I'm really excited about this. It's a super interesting. It's a musical game, which you don't hear that every day, and I'm really excited to see where that's going. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Cool.
All right. Cheers. Hello, and welcome back to the Game Informer Show. I am your host, Andy McNamara. Today, I am joined by Andy Reiner.
Hello, sir.
And Kim Wallace.
Hello.
So we are going to, well, I guess I should say not today, this segment. We have so many segments on Blizzard today, which is exciting because we just did this giant cover with 4 different covers, 4 different games. It's madness. So we have a lot to talk about, and this is going to end up being a pretty long podcast because we have so many games to talk about. But today, with you two, we are going to talk Overwatch 2. Obviously the sequel, which I don't know that any of us expected right away. I definitely was on the train of there's going to be Overwatch and they're going to add things to it forever. So I was definitely shocked early on in our conversations when they said there was going to be an Overwatch 2. as I'm sure everyone here was. But they have. I think one of the things I want to cover first is the very cool way in which they're making Overwatch 2 work with Overwatch 1.
Yes.
So tell me about this program, if you could, please.
Yeah, so if you just play PvP and you don't have any interest in playing any PvE, against bots and all that stuff, you don't need to buy Overwatch 2. All the content they're creating, the new maps, new heroes, new modes, PvP only, are going over into Overwatch 1 as well. So, and they're going to play together. So if you have Overwatch 1, you'll be playing against Overwatch 2 players seamlessly. So you don't have to buy the game again. Like, this is such a great idea for sequels of especially if you look at sports games like FIFA and Madden, you spend all this money or time buying these cards, right?
Yep.
And then at the end of the year,
they're gone.
You might as well just start that game on fire, put it in a dumpster fire, because you're not going to play it again. All that effort is just done when the new season starts. With Overwatch 2, your skins, your heroes, the sprays, voice lines, all that stuff carry over into the sequel as well. So if you do buy it, everything you've done in Overwatch 1 goes into Overwatch 2. If you have no interest in PvE, you never have to buy Overwatch 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever.
Well, but there would be skins that would only be available to me if I had Overwatch. What about the graphical upgrades that's all available to everyone?
Some of the graphical upgrades are only in Overwatch 2. It's a new engine.
Okay.
New HUD stuff, little things like that they're tweaking just to make the game better. That'll go over to Overwatch 1.
Okay.
But they are redesigning the heroes. It's a year later in the lore. So things have changed. It's Winston's armor will be sleeker, like buying a new iPhone, basically, right?
But that's
an upgraded model. That won't go over to Overwatch 2.
Okay.
So let's say
1.
over to Overwatch 1. So let's say you're playing as Winston in Overwatch 1 and I'm Winston in Overwatch 2 and we're on the same team together. You'll see two versions of him.
Gotcha. Unless you have an old Overwatch skin on, then we'd look the same? Or is
yes,
the model?
if I put an Overwatch skin, old Overwatch skin on, it'll still look the same.
Okay.
But if I'm using the default skin for Overwatch 2, his base model, it'll look different.
So am I then, if I don't get Overwatch 2 and I stick to Overwatch 1, will new events, will I be able to get those skins and add them to my character just like anyone else? Any loot box I get will have the same loot opportunities?
They don't know if they're doing loot boxes yet.
Oh, they don't?
No. The whole monetization thing they haven't talked about. I wouldn't be surprised if they abandon that and go more...
Battle Pass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to be the popular and fair thing right now.
Yeah. Well, with loot boxes getting a lot of pressure on a government level, we don't. I think every company out there is concerned not only that should we do them, but will they be legal and what will we have to do to change directions later?
Right.
So I think they always have to have a little bit of an escape plan.
And
with
if that happened, I think that would be in both Overwatch 1 and 2. This is just the new standard moving forward.
Gotcha. Because I kind of got the sense to some degree, at least in the conversation we had, that it felt like your money was unlocking these PvE things, but also that you got just a big package of skins, right, and customization stuff with it. But they're not really. That's not really.
No. So all you're getting when you buy Overwatch 2, you're basically paying for PvE, player versus environment, right? And that is a story experience, which is they don't want to call it a campaign since it's co-op based.
Gotcha.
It's a different thing, but it is a full story with a story arc. Finally, in Overwatch, people have been really vested in the lore in this game, and it's been piecemeal, or you have to read the comics or watch the shorts online. This will be a actual story you get to play through, learn about the characters, slow moments, big, huge, bombastic Avengers-like moments. And then on top of that, the real meat of it is, which nobody's seen yet, is the hero missions. And those are going to be on every map in the game. The ones from Overwatch 1, the new ones they're creating for Overwatch 2, and they're hero-specific missions that they create. And I think there's 4 variables for what they could be: the enemies, the map, the mission. So they could keep tweaking it and have a ton of objectives for you to do. You're going to earn experience as you play through those missions.
So it's kind of like a single-player horde mode kind of thing.
You level up your character.
Not single
too.
player, co-op.
It is co-op.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're leveling up your character. You're unlocking new abilities,
Talents, right?
Yeah, talents.
You customize with abilities.
So and that's a permanent change, like long term, or is that more like the MOBA experience where in a match you gain experience and make choices into the talents of your?
No, it's a long-term thing.
It's a long-term
Yeah, so
commitment.
when we played this, they included, this is going to get confusing, I'm sorry. When we played the story experience, the one they had at BlizzCon as well, they put the talents into the story experience. That's not the plan. They just did that because they wanted to show what the hero mission would be like that talent select
Okay,
thing.
gotcha. All right.
They liked it so much, like how it's playing, that they might eventually, or they're debating right now in development if they're going to include it in story experience as well. But it was designed for the hero missions in that let's say you pick Lucio.
Yeah.
You start the game with his default talent, and then you unlock a new one, and then you suddenly have 2 of them to pick from when you go into that next mission.
Gotcha.
And what we saw, there was a list of 6 different ones, and these things dramatically power these characters up, like break the balance of the game.
Exactly.
So you can't use these talents in PvP. It's
At
only
this time, I feel like at some point they've got to have like crazy mode where you
Yeah.
like. I mean, like right.
Like
yeah,
It could
no,
be
like-
an arcade mode.
fun
yeah.
arcade
yeah,
mode.
yeah.
But like you can, Reinhardt's Earth Shatter, that can do 360-degree damage. When May turns into an ice block, she's just stationary.
Yeah.
But you could turn it into almost like a bowling ball. So when she turns into the ice block, she just starts moving and deals damage. There's
love it.
tons of fun stuff like that. For these missions, they have different difficulties. They're looking at World of Warcraft of all the games for both the story experience and hero missions for the harder difficulties.
By the way, don't diss World of Warcraft in your Overwatch. just FYI.
But they want that, like, those elite clans that are toppling bosses for the first time. They want that on the hardest difficulties.
Gotcha.
So they're trying to find that balance of easily accessible for players right away, just jumping in to be able to go all the way through the story, but then have this super hardcore, like, every bullet matters kind of thing for the hardcore crew.
Gotcha. All right. So that's a lot. So there's these PvE modes, and that's both of them. So there's the hero missions and the story missions, which are the 2. And that's it for PvE, right? That we
Yes,
know.
that we know of right now. But people are like, oh, it's just an expansion pack, right? And
Yeah,
it's like,
I wanted you to correct that because I've heard so many people just say that, and it's like it's not. There's substantial content here.
There's going to be a lot of content there. Like they see this being as deep and rewarding as PvP. Like you're still unlocking stuff 100 hours later. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean? Like, and if you think about like hero missions, if you're playing like Lucio for 50 hours to get everything, that's one of like 32 heroes. So
That's true, yeah.
there's going to be a lot of content there. So,
But it
expansion
doesn't-
is not right, but it is one of the pillars, right? Like,
That is weird to me, though. Like, I mean, that is the one thing I think, just to point to Destiny for a moment, is that the one thing Destiny does right is that when you go do story stuff and you get powers, you bring those to that there's a kind of a solid universe that's shared that you bring them to. And that's definitely interesting to me that there's like, it's its own silo in the game, like that it doesn't affect the multiplayer, which does make it easier to balance multiplayer, which is obviously very important. But like, it's interesting. You're doing these story missions, and the story missions and hero missions are all available as co-op, right?
correct.
Okay, all right.
They don't know if you could do it single player yet. They're still tweaking that, like figuring out if you can. Or even offline. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're looking at all that stuff. They're looking at crossplay. They're looking at universal account.
Yeah, they need universal.
So I
account.
asked questions about this stuff, and they just didn't have. They're like, they gave the stock answer of like, we would really like to do that, but
Yeah, I assume
we're-
matchmaking as well. So if you
Yeah.
didn't have friends, then at least you could
Yeah.
do the
Exactly.
story
Yep.
stuff with them. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, interesting. So that's it for PvE. Now there's also a new mode for PvP, which is push,
Right.
which has a giant robot that pushes.
Yeah, TW1 is his name.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah, he stands in about 8-9 feet in height, but he's kind of your size when he's down and pushing what they call a barrier marker. Do you want to talk about?
Can you
push a
explain
little
the
bit?
explain the
I mean-
game? Explain the game to us.
It's very much like pushing the payload, right?
Kinda,
But it's a robot now.
Yeah, it's. So I was like, oh, it's
It's
like
a
tug of war.
variation,
And
yeah.
Jeff Kaplan, when I was on the cover story trip, was like, that's funny you say that because that was the name of the mode originally. So basically, the robot starts in the middle of the map. Both teams on symmetrical paths, they're snaking paths, but
Yeah.
they're exactly the same geometry-wise, even though the environments look different, are racing to hit the robot first. Once the first team to control the robot will start pushing it toward the other team's base.
Gotcha.
And there will be a counter how many steps basically it's moved, right? Like meters or whatever. And the team that has the highest score at the end, that has pushed the robot closest to the opponent's base, will win.
Gotcha.
And they said rarely will you actually have the robot reach the opponent's space.
Yeah, like finish, right? Where you
Right.
Well, like you said, like tug of war, it's rare that you pull the other team into the muddy middle.
Yeah.
It's more like how far it goes from left to right. Gotcha. All right.
And Leo and I got to play a bunch of matches of push.
Yeah.
They have a lot of shortcuts through the environments, which makes flanking, like you see more flanking on these maps than you have, or on this map, Toronto, any other map. So Bastion, Soldier, Sombra, they were in full force from the Blizzard team.
Gotcha.
And they're like, we're also seeing a lot more Reaper, and like they think it's changing up the meta a lot.
I think Kim is right that it's not a complete reinvention of what you're doing in Overwatch. You know, you're all fighting over this objective still, but I think the most interesting thing about it for me is the map design, because it kind of snakes back and forth in a way that they set up so no matter where the fight is, you can make your way through these shortcuts and go straight to that fight, and it's a lot shorter run back times than the other modes. That sounds really interesting to me.
Do you feel like as far as like esports and like the watching and things like that, does that then give more contact points where it's harder to cover all the approach points as far as people coming in? Because certainly a lot of the Overwatch matches are very tight, right?
Yeah.
You know there's only one window and 2 or 3 corners you need to watch. This certainly sounds like there's a lot more opportunity for you to make a mistake and for someone to really like break through.
Yeah, big time. And the other thing that's interesting is you kind of start thinking about, we've only played 5 matches or whatever, but the shield tank purpose, because the TW1 is pushing that barrier. He's the ultimate shield. Like that shield won't break. So I ended up, since we were getting flanked so much as Moira, huddling up more towards the front of the pack opposed to being behind Rhine and the shields, because that was the best protection for me, because I knew they were going to be coming around.
That they were going to be coming around back.
Just right there, you start playing it a little differently, which is really cool.
So so is it like an area around it that I need to have like teammates around that like fill up a bar that then says you control the push essentially?
Yeah, it's just like...
And you counter it by doing the same thing, getting in the kind of like protection zone?
Correct. It's just like a control point. And if, let's say the match is over or getting toward the end, there's overtime and you got to stay next to it. If you're off it, the match ends. The scoring system they have set up is a little hard to read. So it's like Team Blue has pushed him. Let's say you're watching Overwatch League and it's like, Shanghai Dragons have pushed him 25.61 meters, and then Seoul Dynasty's pushed him 25.5. So there's extra, like, just reading the score is a little difficult just because you're looking at 4 numbers basically.
Yeah.
And the bar fills from the middle, to either side based on each team's progress.
So I don't know.
There is a score. So it's not like where it ends, like how far it's pushed to the left or right. It's how much you push it
furthest
in that direction.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right. I was missing that point. Okay.
I don't know if they're going to bring up something like a note on screen that's like, Blue needs to push it 6 meters, or it's like you're just looking at these numbers up top, like, okay, or the little bar, it's like, Blue's better.
Okay, so it's not as simple as just where it sits on the map. There is.
Yeah, you got to push it further.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
It's not the end where it's like where he ends up physically. It's whoever had the best progress.
So do you think there would be a strategy where you would push it to a spot where it's easy to defend, or that it like has an interesting place where there's a choke point that you would stop pushing it forward because it's easier to defend in certain spots? Is that some of the strategy?
I think you could hunker down. Yeah.
Interesting idea.
Huh. I mean, that's what I think of now that it's not based on how far it goes in. There's no benefit to pushing it all the way. So you'd want to get it to where is it the most advantageous
you could
to attack
have
or defend.
You could set up a little base at some point, but that means that TW is exposed. The other team can capture them. Someone would have to keep pinging in and out.
And of course, if you push him to the end, you win instantly.
Yeah. But that sounds difficult.
Yeah. They're like, it rarely happens.
That's when the other team like just leaves.
Yeah,
right. And someone just, like end it.
Someone lags out.
How long were these matches? What was the typical length?
15 minutes, maybe not even that.
Okay, gotcha.
And they're saying the hero missions like roughly like 10 minutes per those. We haven't seen that. Story experience, which we just kind of glossed over, that was the longest. What was that, Leo? Like 25, 20?
Yeah. It's the total playthrough we have on the site right now and on youtube.com/GameInformer is 15 minutes.
Yeah, and that if you're watching that video, we don't have the story cutscenes on there. They didn't want to show those yet.
Gotcha.
So it's a little shorter than it would actually be. But that is level 1 of the story experience new map. Well, a new level, I should say. It's not a map. It's Rio de Janeiro, Lucio's hometown, which is very cool. And you're taking on Omnics and bots, and
Okay, cool.
it's really well done. Much more intense than the Archives missions from Overwatch 1, the co-op missions.
And in-engine cutscenes, so not quite the full cinematics that we're used to from Overwatch, but they're still very good-looking in-engine cutscenes.
Oh, okay, very cool. So, okay, here's my question. I have played a fair amount of Overwatch.
Yeah.
And I've watched a lot of the shorts they put out because they're really cool and they're really interesting as far as like explaining the character to me. I still don't understand what we're defending ourselves from. Right?
Okay.
Like who is attacking this Overwatch? I feel like it's always been like kind of like left out to be left to the user to make that decision, since they kind of all fight amongst themselves when they go into a PvP battle. So does this game try to actually address what is going on in this world?
They have heard that feedback, for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because like you've played matches with Lucio and Ryan and May and all these characters together forever, but the story experience starts out and it's like Overwatch, which has been reassembled right by Winston. He got the team back together. They're taking on Null Sector, this new threat, this terrorist threat. There was the Omnic crisis way back when. The world fears this is going to happen again, right?
Okay. I can feel it.
But Ryan and these guys, they drop into Rio and Lucio's there, and Lucio's like, "Nice to meet you guys," and you're like, "Oh, weird. They've never met in the lore, you know."
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, all right.
you have that moment of just like, "Oh, that's kind of wild." But the threat is this robot kind of uprising, Omnic. But they also said Talon's going to get involved. That's like Widowmaker, Reaper. We don't know if they're going to be a good team,
Like their own factions kind of amongst the characters. All right.
because they want you to play a lot of heroes in this. Not all the heroes will be playable in it. We know that Wrecking Ball's not in it. They just couldn't figure out a story arc for him to be in there.
Too cute to fight.
But there's a chance that Talon could be bad guys that you battle, like bosses like Reaper, or they could be another team through a story twist. Like, okay, we're teaming up with Talon to take on these Omnics, and then you have those guys to play.
Thank
We'll
you.
see.
That's the best explanation I've gotten. It still sounds a little bit like nonsense, just so you know.
Basically, Avengers is Overwatch, the team,
Okay, gotcha.
and then
No, I mean,
the
I got
space
it.
aliens
I'm
are
not
the
saying,
Omnics.
I'm saying I got it. I'm just saying it is not the clearest defined. And by the way, I hope the story, maybe that's what they wanted to do, is the story will start to bring some clarity to this world, because it is a very interesting world, and I love the character. I mean, everyone loves the characters. I mean, the characters of what have drawn us to this world in a lot of ways, but it definitely needs some sorting.
Right.
Like, and some understanding as to what's going on. I do hope that this story mode does bring that about. And we've got this. We've got the cosplay, or I'm sorry, the crossplay too. We got that too.
People love Overwatch cosplay.
And so, can you tell me any more about this progression system? I mean, we know we talked about it here, but it's only in these co-op modes. But it still confuses me. Are they things that like I choose before I go in and they're locked in during that particular hero mission? Or are they things that I level, like if I level up in the middle of it, I change and add as I go forward? Or do I if I respawn, am I in the room like choosing new talents before I head back out to
So let's say you are on the title screen. You click into hero mission. You select one, Route 66. Hero select screen comes up. You pick May, and you pick one of her talents. You're locked into that for that experience.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and then they don't know if you're going to be getting experience points like level up as you're playing. They think that's too distracting because Overwatch is already like tons of stuff going on. So
Yeah.
they think it's going to be at the end of the mission.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Just
Oh, okay.
like, when you're getting your level, after the mission results or the match results.
Just like you do now for
They think it's going to be there. And then you'll be like, oh, you hit level 10, you unlocked a new talent. I don't know. That's me making it up, but like that's what they're looking at.
Gotcha.
And they said we asked them, because I was like, well, you're all about cosmetics and stuff like that. are you going to unlock cosmetics there just to kind of like dangle a carrot in front of Overwatch 1 players? Like, there's just a specific Lucio outfit you can get if you hit level 80 and the hero missions. That's what Overwatch is about, is cosmetics. If they have time, they will probably do that.
Okay, cool.
So there could be some stuff that maybe, that new outfit might cross over into PvP, but only cosmetics, right? Like they would never let abilities go to PvP.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's cool. I mean, like I said, I think the way that they're approaching this game is pretty brilliant as far as like a way to like get people interested in Overwatch 2. And I think it's a good entry point for people too that didn't play PvP, that they'll be drawn to the PvE stuff and want to get involved. So I gotta admit, I'm intrigued by this. I do think to myself, like, why aren't they making like a looter shooter? Like why aren't they making like a Destiny? Why did they not try to do something? I mean, Titan started as an MMO. Like, I mean, that's where a lot of these characters have their roots. Maybe that's Overwatch 3. I guess that's maybe something that they could do down the line. Or I even thought too at some point, I thought they'd try to do a battle royale.
We asked them about that. And I think that's in our rapid fire, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
And they said no. Never thought about it?
They gave us an answer of we're always looking at different things, and we're focusing on one thing at a time, basically.
But I saw him secretly start coding it. He leaned over and started typing.
He's like, good idea.
Yeah.
So, okay, you two play a ton of Overwatch.
Yeah, every night, pretty much.
I mean, is this what you wanted? Are you excited? Are you thrilled? Are you through the roof on this? Is this everything you ever wanted? Tell me what's your reaction to your time spent with the game and what you've seen in this early stage?
You go first.
I mean, I was surprised because it's not what I expected, but I think fans like have been gunning for that story mode, and I thought there would be some capacity of that, but I think not to the extent that they're doing it with how much content. And also, like, me and my friends, I mean, you get PvP gets, you get a little frustrated with it after a while. You want to just hop in and co-op together, and we do that now with like Junkenstein's Revenge
when you can.
Yeah. And that's nice, but I do like having these longer missions that you can do. And, the RPG fan in me loves that you can level up these characters and pick their abilities and kind of change up what you're doing in matches. So I think that adds like some extra variety in how you play characters and what you do there.
Yeah, you're great. You're right on. I didn't even think about that. It's a great palate cleanser to kind of like take a break and still be able to play and enjoy the world and things like that. How about you, Renner?
Yes and no. Yes, in terms of I want story. I think these characters are super cool, and learning more about them is, why not? Like, I love the animated shorts. So to have a full story to play through in the game, that's awesome. We don't know how long it is. Kaplan did kind of slip up when he was talking to me. I asked him if I was playing by myself, could I just jump into any mission I wanted to? He's like, no, you need to, if you go into matchmaking, you'll have to go in order. But let's say your friend is on chapter 8.
Okay, gotcha.
He can invite you, or she can invite you over into join them, even if you haven't played through 1 through 7. So he at least gave me a chapter 8. I don't know if he was just kind of pulling that out of thin air.
Well, they sound like they're kind of like individual experiences anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're individual levels.
Yeah.
But like when I finished, Leo and I finished the first story experience mission, it almost seemed like it set up like, okay, these same characters need to be in the next one.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know where, maybe there's a cutscene that just, meanwhile, over in Australia, you know what I mean? Like, they could segue that way, but it seemed like we were on a clear arc. So it'll be interesting to see if it is individual, like, little things, or if it is one big connected thing and you only play 12 characters or something.
Because each story mission is a multiplayer map. So it's not like a Mario level that's like side-scrolling or goes somewhere or anything like that.
Right.
Like they are all just events that take place. And there's scripted events that happen within there, like story elements that all break out.
Yeah, there's a lot more set-piece moments, I would say, like buildings falling, bosses coming out, stuff like that.
That wouldn't have been in a multiplayer map, even though that's the basis of the world you're in.
And they said that their levels are scripted in a very different way for co-op, and they're not looking at these maps at all for PvP. The location, the idea of the location, like Rio, yes, they want to do a multiplayer map of Rio, but they're saying that they'd probably make their own PvP map, given how different the gameplay is.
Gotcha. So how about you, Leo? What was your takeaway?
I was really impressed. I think it's a fair point that they could do more with how much people love this world and have kind of that MMO-like looter experience. And as much as it is a fully realized thing, I think part of it is they want people to be switching back and forth between PvP and PvE, you know?
Yeah.
Like they're different enough but similar enough that in an evening you could be in the mood for one or the other.
Oh, I didn't give you my it not being the thing I wanted. I want more PvP modes. Like adding push is great, and that will add one more variable to competitive play. But as someone that plays everyday competitive play, you need more.
I have a
match
feeling
types.
they'll come in time.
I know, but it's like one out of the gate. I was like, oh, that's okay.
Okay,
Well, that's
yeah.
a start. But
But they added a lot of modes during the period of time that Overwatch 1 was out.
that's what I'm
right?
thinking is going to happen with it.
You're totally
probably.
right.
But yeah, it is a little bit to only have like one new one when they announce. But I think they wanted to focus on the story stuff because it's such a big component of, that is what makes it Overwatch 2 in this regard.
And one of my big concerns is, like you're talking about bouncing between the two modes. They have some tweaks that they made to the heroes. What do you call them, Leo? Like innate talents or
Passive abilities?
passive abilities. So they have some passive abilities where, like, when Ryan has his barrier out, he moves faster than he does in PvP. So there are things like that where I'm like, I'm going to get used to Ryan
A
moving at a
faster
certain speed,
Ryan
and then I'm
and
going
go-
to jump into a competitive
And
match.
feel
gonna
like
be a disaster.
molasses.
Yeah, you're gonna
you'll
get-
feel like
yeah.
So
molasses.
there's a little bit of concern there,
Yeah, I
right? Of
could
like
see
having
that.
these super powered up heroes and then like going back to just the base set.
Yeah, be like attacked from the side. Be like, I'm going to do this attack. That doesn't do squat in this particular case. Yeah,
you got to
all right.
rewire your brain.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's interesting. Also, too, I wonder. I'm going to be interested to see with this new approach, which I do think is fascinating. If like someone who has Overwatch 1 is basically going to have to reinstall the whole game, like they're going to get one big giant download on day one. That's going to be ridiculous.
Probably. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how they're going to handle that, and how I don't know if you noticed, but sometimes gamers like to complain that
What?
there might be some complaints about this. But I do think it's interesting.
I hope it changes the industry in terms of how sequels are approached, especially these ones that I mentioned earlier in our talk of like where you just feel like your progress is just gone. It'd be nice to have stuff, at least some stuff carry over. I know Destiny did a little, but yeah, when you put, especially when you're putting in money, time is valuable too, but like it just feels like,
Well, I agree.
Okay.
I think
That was for
every
just a season.
game that has these kind of things needs to understand that it needs to be persistent. I mean, I think that's a for sure thing. I think this model is interesting in that I like this because I think it is interesting and creates some buzz around it being Overwatch 2. I definitely fall in the camp. I'm not calling. I get it. It's not an expansion pack, but like I feel like the same goal could have been reached doing the same thing. They just needed the marketing to be excited about, a kind of like a new game out there, right? Where I think if you're doing things well, and I think they're doing this as well, like if you make the story stuff compelling, people will buy it, right? Which I always believe in. If you make something great, people will buy it. But I kind of like just having I like to where we started. Like I like it's just Overwatch.
yeah.
Sticking to like what it is, how they can add new modes, how they could sell new modes in game, how I could give everybody the graphical upgrades that you worked on, and then give everybody the option to just add these parts as they want them. I think if they're good, they will add those to their thing. It doesn't need to be a whole package that you get. But that said, this is a really smart way to do it. If you're gonna do it, this is a good way to do it. I think everyone kind of like benefits if that's the model you want to go after.
And it's not punishing people who have no interest in the story stuff doing. And that's what I like most about it is those players who want to just stick playing PvP. They don't have to feel like they have to buy Overwatch 2 to do that.
They told us they had over 50 million players and they don't want to lose any of them. So it's like this seemed like the best solution for them.
Yeah.
And two things we don't know, by the way. Release date. They said PS4, Xbox One, PC, and Switch all the same day. I asked PS5, Scarlet, and they're like, they didn't want to talk about that yet.
No one can
If
answer it.
No one can
pushes-
talk about that.
If that release date pushes beyond May, June, August next year, something like that, in that time frame, it has to be on those two systems. It's just they can't talk about it yet, right?
I mean, I think it's good to assume that any game that's late next year is going to be going to be on multiple on the new gens.
And then the second thing is price. We don't know if it's going to be $60,
Oh.
right? Like, or if it'll be.
Yeah, $40, $20.
Yeah.
I mean,
But people immediately just started like up at arms, like, oh my God, like am I going to pay $60 again? It's like, I don't know. I
Well,
don't know what it'll be.
I mean, if you love those characters and you want to play it, and there is a new hero, right, too, which I think everyone gets a new hero.
There's going to be a
yeah.
bunch of new heroes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, there's all those kind of things that I think are compelling. So, I mean, I have no, that's the thing is for me, I don't mind giving a developer that I like and a game I like, I don't mind giving them money. You know what I mean? Like, if it's good and compelling content that I want to play, have at it. You know what I mean? I don't mind it being a fair exchange. I just like the exchange to make sense.
Yeah. All new heroes and maps go to Overwatch 1, by the way.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
And that's super fascinating. Well, thank you all for coming on, talking Overwatch 2.
Absolutely.
And Andy, if you got any further questions, I can't recommend our new gameplay today enough of the Overwatch 2 story experience. And we also have the new mode Push coming up this Monday.
We have so much video content. It's
Yeah,
exciting.
a rapid fire with Jeff Kaplan.
Yeah.
Where he
man, I
answers
can't wait.
over 100 questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's plenty to learn. We definitely got through the basics, I think, here. And so thank you both for coming on the show. Thank you. Leo, as always, the man in the room, the man behind the curtain, really, truly running it all.
Thank you.
Back there. Thank you all for your feedback on Overwatch 2. We have coming up, we are going to go into WoW, Shadowlands. We are going to do Hearthstone. And then hopefully we're going to end this thing up with an interview with Liam Esler, David Gaider, the Summerfall Studios with their new game Chorus, which is a musical adventure, which I can't wait to learn more about. So thank you, and we'll be back shortly. Hello, and welcome back to the Game Informer Show. I gotta tell you, I've lost track of how many segments we have so far because we've had so many segments with so many Blizzard games. I have no idea where I am, but we're here with you, and that's all that matters. And I am here with Dan Tack and his amazing, amazing jacket. If you are watching this in video form, it is spectacular. Welcome, Dan.
Hello. And yeah, you should check us out in video if you'll just listen to us. It's quite the sight. Hey.
Yeah, man, we really are amazing to look at. And also in the booth we have Leo Vader as always.
Speaking of amazing to look at.
Exactly. Just stop staring at us, please. We're a little uncomfortable. Okay, let's talk about World of Warcraft.
Oh, I know that game.
I know this game as well. And then we'll also explore here at the end. We'll also go a little bit into the new Hearthstone game as well, since Dan played and wrote the stories for the new issue that is out now. And then we're going to have lots of content on GameInformer.com this month and on YouTube. So, smash that like button or
That's
whatever,
right.
or follow or whatever.
That's what the kids say. I like it.
Do some smashing. Should I tell people to smash? I think that has another meaning as well. We'll
Smash that bell or whatever it is
we'll
there.
move on. We'll move on.
All right.
World of Warcraft. So they have a the least shocking moment is that they announced a World of Warcraft expansion coming. Shadowlands is the name.
That's the name.
Which I think was hilarious in the time that lead up because it had leaked a long time ago as a name, and then it leaked again, kind of coming close to BlizzCon, and I think everyone in the WoW community was like, I don't know what to do. Like they weren't sure if it was true or not, if it was just the same rumor resurfacing, which in fact this is the time it was accurate.
So yeah, it's funny because I was reading up on the leaks as we were doing the story, and the only thing accurate about the leaks was in fact the name. No Tinker class this time, everybody. Sorry.
So let's talk about it. So it's 2020 release.
Yes.
There is history shows that will be in the fall sometime.
You never know, but yeah, that seems like a fair guess.
A fair assumption. So there are a number of highlights to this. There are new zones.
Okay, so the quick pitch is we are going to the afterlife of all of the World of Warcraft. So not, the whole universe, not just Azeroth. Like we're going to the...
By the way, I've killed a lot of things. I feel like this is going to be a very crowded place.
So interestingly enough, you get sent to different zones based on how you were in your life for your arc in the afterlife. Or you can go somewhere else. We'll get into that later, but like it's
You mean my arc when I'm playing this particular?
No, like
line.
theoretically, if you were a good guy, you go to this zone. If you were a bad guy, you go to this zone. But the events of the last several years, basically, of World of Warcraft expansions, everybody goes to hell. If I'm just distilling it, there's a zone in the new expansion called the Maw. It's essentially hell. It's a bad place, right? So all of the souls that have been going to the afterlife for the last 2 expansions or so have been routed straight to hell as part of this new enemy, the Jailer, his master plan.
Yes, who's been basically behind the scenes manipulating things in the current expansion.
Correct.
Yes.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah, just trying to set it up.
Yeah,
yeah.
So the
They
setup
show
is-
that in the first trailer that
Right.
why Sylvanas has been doing.
Yeah, Sylvanas is working with the jailer.
Correct.
To accomplish, we don't know yet, but we'll find out. And we're going to go there. We're still alive, by the way, while we're going to the afterlife, though all the inhabitants there will think we're dead because only dead people are allowed there. Only souls.
And then all we do is click on a portal and we go back to being alive and then this other thing and we time travel and all the other things we do in WoW that you just accept.
We've already done time travel.
Yes.
Why not go to the afterlife?
Exactly.
But yes. However, everything will be, it's different to explore the zones. It's interesting. They're exploring more creative space because none of these things, you can't just be like, okay, this is how orcs are. This is how trolls are. Now they have to figure out how these new cultures and races work.
So there are basically factions that you follow. Now, do you choose this early on as you kind of head down
here's the deal.
the questing path?
You're going to go through all 4 of the zones. They all deal with death in a different way. So like if, the first one you go to is going to be called Bastion. And that is basically a heaven scenario.
And by the way, it is specifically ordered this time because in
Correct.
the last couple of expansions, it's been like, here's a board, you pick which way you want to go, and you've been able to approach it because everything has been has scaled to you as the player.
So here's how this works. You are basically having a crafted leveling experience, and there's a reason behind it. So you're going to go through the zones in order, and you're going to learn what each faction's role is in the afterlife and what they provide. You get to test out their special abilities, and then at the end, when you hit 60, you're going to side with one, and you're going to get that stuff for good, or until you respec. But the respec is really
They're saying
expensive.
it's going to be difficult. Yes.
Yeah. So you're going to go through the whole crafted narrative, and then once you side with a faction in the late game, you'll get a full new sort of campaign based on that faction you choose.
Okay,
for an endgame
the kind of finale.
You'll have a whole in-game campaign revolving around the faction that you pick of the 4 choices.
Like the current war campaign, or do you think something bigger than that?
It's bigger because it ties into all of your in-game progression. Like you're gonna, instead of artifacts and stuff like that, you're gonna have this thing called the soul binds. These are people you pick up, essentially another talent system and tree, and you're gonna get more than one of them as you progress through your thing. So like, if I side with the Revendreth, which I'm absolutely going to, I could get an arrogant vampire as my ally, and he'll provide different abilities to me as I go through and start working up.
Is there a limit on how many people I bind myself to?
I think there is, but each one of them has their own giant built-out tree.
Gotcha.
So you're gonna have be able to swap through them. Like, let's say.
So it's like a spec that I would then choose?
Yeah, kind of like that.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yeah, that provide passive abilities, and you can swap through them. Like maybe this is the guy I like with me for PvP. This is the guy I like with me for raids. Or maybe I can just swap some points out between them. And it's not like a guy who follows you around, not like a bodyguard. Okay, so this is just like a.
You don't put them in a backpack and carry them around like Yoda kind of thing?
It's like you might interact with them in your new sanctum that you'll be hanging out. Sort of, that's very similar to a class hall. Okay.
Oh, okay. And is that shared like the class halls were?
Shared
with
like the class halls, but only with the people of your faction. So if you want the Bat Cave with your coffin and everything, you go Revendreth. Where we can go through
which
the
basically
factions.
everyone's going to do.
And I said that, and I said that when I was out there, and they're like, well, we'll just make the other faction abilities more powerful. They were kind of joking, but,
And they're probably not wrong. I mean, that's what scares me. I do worry about those kind of things, like look lame, be powerful, versus why can't we have both?
With what you side with gives you both a class-specific and a faction-specific ability. So it's kind of crazy.
Can you give me an example of a faction-specific ability?
Yeah, so all those are more not mobility, but they're not combat oriented.
Okay.
Let's say I side with Bastion, for instance. That one gives you it's almost like a blink, but it's an aggro reducing blink that teleports you. If you side with the Ardenweld, sort of the druidish Night Fae kind of things, you get an aggro drop and a turn into an animal.
And those will be available in PvP as well?
Yeah. As far as I know, they are usable everywhere.
So a lot more movement across the board for everyone.
They're on a cooldown, so you can't just smash it all the time.
Like 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
About a minute ish. They
they're not like
range
10 seconds. They're not something you're gonna. It's like blink. For a mage.
You're not.
It's not anything
not like that.
Okay, all right.
But they do offer significant effects, and those are faction specific. But as a class, you get stuff too, and that's going to differ based on your class.
And that's going to be a lot more impactful. That's going to be like a.
That one is going to go right into your rotation.
Gotcha.
So you're going to have you've got your tree. You hit 1, 3, 4, 5. If you're a mage, maybe this one weaves in the 5th slot, 4th slot. You'll have a spot for it. It'll be very evident where you're going to use that in your standard end game rotation.
Gotcha. Which is what terrifies me a bit, as we discussed this ahead of time, is that because you're kind of locked into a faction and you want to be, you want to min-max what you're doing and be the best you can do, when you've already traveled down a path and then they change that thing or they change the balance in a patch, in a persistent world, that's always a problem. Then you're like, okay, now I have the lane power. I need to redo it if I want to do the most damage, which is, by the way, if you guys haven't figured out, this is a problem I have. I'm always trying to make my character as powerful as possible. So that brings with it a certain frustration.
Well, the idea there is that none of them will be lame or useless, right?
Well, that's obviously the hope.
There,
I'm just going with, I love Blizzard. I love the WoW team, but they do have a history with balance and aggressive correction of imbalances.
And sure, there's some stuff there, but like the thing is, like, you're gonna get involved in that faction. You're gonna, at the end of the day, I think that all the other core components that you're gonna be progressing in, like the soul binds, and you're gonna get loot and transform all kinds of other crazy stuff from this faction.
It changes your raid experience too, right? You were saying that to some degree?
Changes your raid experience. It changes your endgame campaign.
Oh, just the campaign. Not anything. It doesn't go anything like you don't do a different. Like the last one they had, where like if you raided as Horde or Alliance, you had like different experiences.
There may be. It was not 100% clear, but there may be. We haven't talked about this yet, but it may have an accent on your legendary items. Like maybe just a little bit of. I don't know exactly to the extent, but it may have some impact on that.
And so when you say legendary items, how many legendary items are they bringing back into the game?
So I don't know how many, but there's only one way to get them. And we haven't talked about that yet.
And what is that? That's what I'm wondering.
So
tell me about items.
So first, I need to set up the end game zone here. So
okay. Before you do that too, we should also mention, because you mentioned going to level 60, there has been a stat squish that we should just quickly put out there. So that's why 60 is the max. They're changing the game. They're squishing everything. You do the early zones, and then you can choose which expansion you want to level up through.
So if you are a new player, you've got to play through BFA. You level up to 10, then you do 10 to 50 in BFA, and then you join us in the Shadowlands. If you already have a big character and you're just making an alt, you can level to 10, and then boom, pick any expansion you want, and basically you play that expansion, and then you're current.
That's cool.
Yes.
That is cool. I won't be doing that, but that is cool.
For people who have alts, you know, that's a really cool thing. Because before, you'd start one expansion, you'd play it for 2 levels, and you'd be like, all right, I'm leaving, I'm done.
And hopefully that'll fix. I never really liked the rebalance they did to leveling that made it like a slog.
It's supposed to speed it up substantially.
Yeah, that'll be nice. Okay, I just wanted to throw that in there. That was a quick note I thought we should address since that was there. Now continue.
So you got the 4 factions.
Yes.
And I should probably tell you what they are real quick.
Yes, let's do that.
Before we get in, we got Bastion. This is similar to if you are a really good person in life, virtuous, upstanding,
Paladin-like.
Certainly, yes. It's a really good example. Paladins, monks, all kind of. If you're a good person and focused on discipline and improvement, that's where you go. You go to Bastion with the Kyrians. They're angels, more or less.
So all the healers will pick this.
The spirit healers are here. If you like big, mechy, paladin golem type things and stuff like that, you're going to like this zone. Angels. It's very peaceful. Huh? It's not for me.
It sounds very nice.
It was actually the zone we got to play for the BlizzCon demo. It's cool, but like compared to the other zones that we got to peek at, it's...
Because you said one of these zones is you think is the best zone they've ever made, and we'll get to that.
And we're going to get there.
All right.
So after Bastion, you've got Maldraxxus. These are the Scourge. These are not the Scourge that we see in Azeroth, though. These are not controlled by the Lich King, whereas pretty much almost all the Scourge we see in Azeroth are.
Gotcha.
So these are like the primordial Scourge. They obey no master. They are might makes right kind of people,
Yeah,
they just smash everything, power good. They're probably my second favorite one.
Okay, gotcha.
They're really cool. Lots of ziggurats and necrolords and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And then we've got the Ardenweld. So these are druidic. You've seen plenty of accents of that in WoW.
Certainly.
But these are more of like the fall and winter druids. You don't get to see much of those. It's more summer and spring, I think, in World of Warcraft generally. So these are like they handle the death cycle more or less.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah.
And then the coolest faction ever, and one of the coolest zones in the game, is the Revendreth and the Venthyr, which are essentially vampires. They run the place. It is a giant castle zone full of torture. These are for where bad people go.
Gotcha.
These are bad people that still have a chance of being
This is the hell
redeemed.
that you thought it would be.
This isn't hell. We're gonna talk about hell. This is like super bad people, but there's a chance for redemption.
Gotcha.
They still have a purpose in the afterlife if they can etch away their sins that they've earned, and plenty of sins. And these vent there don't take your sins away peacefully. It's very violent, a lot of torture, undercurrents of
I mean, outside the kind of playful violence that WoW's known for, do you feel it goes darker?
So yeah, for sure. They take souls of these people and throw them into this forest and say, "You're free, go," and then they hunt them down in there. It's very vicious. They torture their own people because they can't torture them in the general manner because they're like infinite beings of the cosmos or something. So what they do is they toss them into this zone that has been breached by a ray of light. They're vampires, right?
Yeah.
So they burn and die in that zone. So they put them in there. They go insane. They blast each other with mirrors. This is a really bad place.
I can see why you love it so.
Yeah, of course. That's all. It speaks to me, right? No, it's a really cool zone, and we talk about it a ton in the issue. I got a guided tour of it. It's really, really cool.
And this is your favorite zone ever made.
From the it's like
and it's not just the aesthetic. It's
the thing is that like all these are built out. Like we've been going over them in 2 sentences,
Yeah.
but there's a whole culture and like ethos behind all these things that they reflect their purpose in the afterlife for like getting these people to repent. Like Kel'Thalos is in Revendreth, attempting his redemption for all he's done.
Gotcha. Yes. Many things.
And so there's tons of that. There's going to be some stuff on the site about that, and you should check out the issue for a full look at that zone. It is incredible. It's like Bloodborne meets Transylvania meets it's badass beyond belief.
You said it was a lot of interesting things happening because it's inside a castle that it has a different feel than a lot of different zones.
Yeah, it is
because of that kind of enclosed nature.
It's not just it's a castle, giant castle, huge zone in scope. But it's got a lot of vertical space to play with. Like there's elevators going up and down. It's not all interior. There's exterior as well. Like you've got this sort of dilapidated village on the outskirts that you come in on, and then you're going to the castle proper. Then you go higher and higher where the aristocrats live, and they hold their debaucherous parties and all that stuff. I'm telling you, this place is awesome.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it.
Yeah. So if you side with them, you get to become one of the soul-stealing vampires, for lack of. They don't steal your soul, right? They're helping you, but believe me, these guys are not good guys.
And the experience is the same whether you're Horde or Alliance.
That's correct. You're going to start. There is a Dalaran sort of experience,
shared,
or Shatrath City. So you've got that shared zone that you're going to go into. That's sort of looped, connected to all these zones.
Okay, gotcha. So we're back to the shared giant city.
Yes.
And then how do I get to my own kind of like? I would travel to that continent.
I believe there are still flight paths or something like that. You know what? That's a great question.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not entirely sure. I'm just assuming there's going to be flight paths.
Okay.
From
gotcha.
that central hub. Or maybe doors, portals.
Yeah, hopefully, they've been a little stingy in the main game with portals and trying to realign travel, which, as a side note, if you're listening, Blizzard, I'm not a big fan of. But, I mean,
flight points are just simpler, right? Because once you get into it's like, if I have to go to this portal to get to that place,
Yeah, I love adventuring in the game, and there's times when I want to go adventure, and there's times I just want to get to where I'm going to go to play that content.
Sure.
There's a balance, I think, there, but I know they're always kind of dealing with that a little bit. So
that's a really basic rundown of the 4 major factions that you're going to be siding with and experiencing across your journey, and then picking one at the end that's going to take you into your end game path. And that comes with mounts, transmogs, gear. I mean, upgradable mounts even. Like it's crazy.
Basically, you're going to need a main and 3 alts to collect all the stuff.
If you're crazy, I wouldn't do it. It seems like a lot to do.
But I mean, that's essentially what they've set it up as.
Yeah, for a player that's looking for it, if you want to see everything, right? If you want to get that experience, because you're going to have little perks. It's not like crazy stuff, but like, I know if, like, let's say you side with the Proto Scourge kind of guys, you can build an abomination inside Maldraxxus and play with it.
I mean, I know I'm going to want to, just because I'm going to want to see, especially if there's campaigns there that are as long as they say they are, then that's pretty compelling.
They're post-leveling campaign experience, yeah.
And I'm really hopeful this game, BFA has been very anti-alt to the point of, I have actually, in Legion, was the first time I had leveled every single character and done things with them. And in BFA, I was like, no. Well,
right, because the artifact power system is just like, I'm just going to level you up, and then I'm going to look at you in 6 months.
Yeah, and they've said at least it sounded like that they're going to try to address this to some degree. Can you talk about that at all?
I don't have a whole lot. It's like it's supposed to be. So it's more
like we're going to do it, but they're not saying how.
Yeah. There's a resource you do get. Like, again, this is ties into your soul binds and stuff, but there's not going to be like they don't want people to be grinding the resource to go through that process.
I hope not. I mean, I'd love to see some of that grinding, and they're already talking about in the next patch 8.3 in game that it will address some of the like Titan forging and some other things like
Titan
that.
forging and Mythic. They're trying to change those systems as well, where you'll just have instead of like rolling your super uber piece, you'll get choices.
Gotcha.
So that way you won't just be like, well, I'm forced to use this eye level 845 piece, but it doesn't have exactly what I want. So you'll get like the more you do, the better you do, we'll give you a better bucket to pick from, is essentially how it was presented to me.
Yeah, I think that system still needs work. I'm not crazy about what's coming out so far. At least it's on PTR as far as like the testing stuff they're doing with corruption. I'm not 100% sure.
It seems like they really want to dial back from Mythic and Titan Forge in this.
They do, but I still feel like they're putting enough options where like, oh, hey, you can remove this because you've built up corruption, but they're not making it easy for me to get it back if I change or my build changes or do things like that. I think they need to understand that I don't want to have to refarm because I made a choice or I got it. It shouldn't be, I got a new piece of gear. This is exciting.
Right.
Not, oh my God, I got a new piece of gear. It's great. I have to do a bunch of work.
Let's talk
to
more
make it
about
work.
getting new pieces of gear.
Let's talk about that.
So after you've gone through these experiences, there's an end game zone called the Maw. Now, to put this in terms of a WoW player, like it's like Timeless Isle, so it's an open-ended experience, but it's crazy hardcore lethal. So not like Timeless Isle. No, I mean just period. This zone is very, very deadly. And there's a mechanic, like not only is it packed with elite monsters and environmental dangers and all this other stuff, it's got something where everything you do in the zone basically of consequence will attract sort of this Eye of Sauron. It's not called that, but that's really what it is. The more attention you draw to yourself in the zone, the more things are going to come after you. You're going to get increased aggro radius from some of the patrols. You're going to have assassination squads come after you. The zone itself could chain you and throw meteors at you and kill you. Eventually, you accrue enough of this resource, the Eye of the Jailer mechanic or whatever, and you'll just be killed by the environment. Like it becomes unsustainable for you to live down there. And there's no like safety zones. There's no like town you can hang out in. There's not like any NPCs to just chill with and get your quest and do quests. It's like
Do you just hearth out eventually at some point?
Yeah, I talked to them about that, and they're like, well, we've also debated whether people can hearth or mount at all in the zone. So they might not even allow that. It's supposed to be super dangerous down there. Like they want it to be.
I
that.
agree, but I think that sounds punishing.
They're still leaving
points.
the Hearthstone in there, as far as I know. But they talked about it.
Because I also don't want to be in there for 20 minutes and gotten somewhere, or 30 minutes or an hour, and then have to be like, okay, timer's up. Because I have to run out and then re-enter to start doing whatever farm or whatever I'm trying to do.
So the activities in there aren't going to be like collect 20 of a rock or anything like that. It's more of a look around and find individual things to do. Because they don't want you to have to, like you said, they don't want you to get to 19 out of 20 on a quest thing and then just have it be not able to be completed because the guy's crazy and he's coming after you.
Yeah.
So this is the Maw. This is an end game zone that they said, like, they took lessons from Classic.
And have PvP in it, I assume.
I don't think there's PvP in there.
Oh, you don't?
Not that I know of.
Even if you have a war mode on?
Oh, with war mode on, probably, yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming that with war mode on, that would be there would be the environment and
it's the
players, right?
This is supposed to be hell, so I'd assume maybe, yeah, sure.
Make it as hellish as possible. Yeah, okay.
I don't know that for a fact, but yeah, that seems like it would make sense.
Okay.
So this is the zone where the Jailer's Tower is, and this is the coolest new thing in the expansion that I know of.
I'm so excited for it.
It is really cool. This is a 1 to 5 player roguelike dungeon crawl. Okay. Now, what does that mean in World of Warcraft? Yeah, so this is how you get legendary items, by the way. And this is going to be an evolving experience. It changes not week to week, but on a regular cadence. There's gonna change what you can do. If you've played Slay the Spire, that is a very interesting. That's a good way to look at the templating on top of the WoW experience for this,
including the card kind of
without
aspect?
the cards, but the whole aspect of like you're getting different powers that make you play differently as you go through the tower, and you're collecting different resources.
Okay. Like
it's definitely for those who have played the game, you'll understand immediately. For those that haven't, I'm going to try to walk you through it here. You go up a floor, okay? You don't know what's going to be there. It's the floor layouts, enemies, all this stuff is randomized every time. You can go in solo, you can go in with friends. It scales, so it's all good that way.
And the floor is big.
Floors can be big, they can be small. It's all random. There's bosses, there's non-bosses.
Okay.
You've got loot, but the loot isn't like you find outside. It's not like finding a sword or finding a dagger, finding a BOE or anything like that. You're getting power-ups. Some of them are really basic, like plus 10% health, plus 10% damage. Those numbers are much higher actually, but
Yeah.
you get the point. Static boost, passive boost to health, damage, armor, whatever, protection.
Are
But
they
then
immediately going to like my buff list, or am I equipping them?
you're not equipping them. You're just getting them, right? You're basically picking cards. They're not cards. You're picking things as you go through, as you unlock these things.
Do they go in my bag and I click on them to?
Nope.
They're just as soon as I loot it, I've gotten it.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
okay.
right. You can get other things like this idol they showed me that lets you see what enemies are holding, what power ups, so that you can figure out your way through a floor and navigate it, so you don't have to waste time killing stuff that doesn't have anything. Then there's chests and all kinds of other things, and you're gonna get different abilities that are gonna start interacting with each other. Let's say you get an ability that says, whenever you do shadow damage, it has a chance to blind them. Okay, you're in a class with no shadow damage. But then you get another ability that says all your attacks do shadow damage. So then you start combining these crazy things. You get the whole goal is to get yourself overpowered, and you can. That's just like Slay the Spire. Like you have a run where it's like you're crushing everything, and then of course something stops your build, your comp that you've been preparing. But there's all kinds of floors to climb. All right. And the one example they gave me is a pretty good showcase of just how crazy it gets, I think. Whereas regular WoW is about like beating the dungeon by its own rules, this is just about breaking all the rules and attempting to break them, and they're going to let you break them.
Yeah,
that's
which
the
is
whole
great.
design. Which is like, so they got this ability which lets the player like instantly kill maw rats. Okay, maw rats are just like a crappy little enemy. Then they have another ability that combines with it so that when you kill a maw rat, it explodes for like huge % damage. So what they do with that combination of skills, for example, if you pick those two skills up on your run, they get to a boss floor, right? And you just drag a bunch of rats over to the boss, blow them all up on the boss. Yeah, and you kill the boss. And then, of course, you get to a floor with... this is a specific example they got me from a playtest, and they got to a floor without any maw rats, and then, of course, those abilities were useless, and they got stomped. But, you know, and you're climbing it, you're getting these resources, and these are... this is how you get legendary weapons from this climbing this tower. And again, can be done solo, can be done with friends. They're going to have different events, like it's going to change, like 2 weeks or so. Like I don't know the cadence, but they showed me one where it's like you're going to have one of the events is going to have you get to bring like an evil dog in with you and change its abilities up as you go through, like a summoned pet.
Huh.
So it'll get different things. Like,
I love variety. I mean, variety is definitely the
so
thing.
in playtesting, they're like, this is super fun mode, and they keep doing it when they add new cards, and it's fun again. But then it fades, right? You know, because you start learning templates, you start learning things. So they're designed for it, so it's going to be pretty much an ever evolving experience where the events change on a constant basis. So that you're in there 1 week, it's going to have a completely different power up set than it does another week. And that's going to keep it fresh.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I also will be annoyed when I build up a specific build and just fall one level short of the legendary I'm trying to get, or to whatever kind of...
See, I don't think it works exactly like that. Like, it is going to be...
Like, they're going to be random kind of drops, or just from
like
chests that you get?
Right, the legends aren't like... It was not explained to me like that at all. Like, you're not just going to get high and you get a legendary. I think you get something from there that you take out to a guy who turns that resource into the legendary. And you'll be able to pick the legendary you want, yes.
So like a vendor. Like, I'll grind...
Yeah.
Maw points and bring them out and turn maw points into items.
You get runes, okay, and then so you get you turn these runes. The quality of the rune is going to be based on how high you get. Essentially, you could get lucky; it could be a little higher, you could be a little lower. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The higher you get, the better quality runes you get. You put these runes together to craft the legendary that you want. So if you've got rune XYZ, you make, the Dagger of Dan.
Yeah.
And that's you're going to know what you're getting before you make it.
Are they going to throttle this? Is this going to have a weekly maximum?
I don't know. I did ask. Like, I think you can only have one legendary equipped at a time at first. I'm not entirely certain on that.
Are legendaries just weapons or armor as well?
I don't know.
Many questions.
I should have asked that one.
And they are specific, like, items. Like, they're not ones where, like, I'm gonna, like, they don't have a talent tree within them like the legendaries that we had.
No, they're specific items.
They're specific items, like old school kind of classic design.
Yeah.
I think I'm excited about this tower. This is the thing that I think it brings. I'm a big fan of M+, or was until this last season. I'm really looking forward to next season. But I think this brings a lot of fun things you can do with your friends. It's like it's a great addition to WoW, and I'm thrilled about that.
Any number of them, and because of the way it's set up, it doesn't matter how many healers or tanks or anything you got with you. You can roll it.
Roll with your friends and have fun, which is great. So But it did bring up the point of like they are changing the way that they are building the characters and the talent. So like you said, you may not have a shadow ability, which in the past would be for sure because they had trimmed our talents significantly. They are open again to bringing back more of the kind of class-defining features, being like you don't have to be one spec to use poisons as a rogue.
So that's the thing. Yeah, you're going to have those, but like how applicable they are to endgame experiences is going to vary wildly because having a lot of those, like if I'm an arcane mage, I will still have my fireball and I'll still have my ice bolt, but am I going to use those? Probably not, except in a corner case scenario where I'm in this dungeon and it's like, okay, I've got like some crazy skill that gave me plus 1,000% frost damage. I guess I might as well use my frost bolt now.
I mean, I'm both excited and a little concerned about this talent change. One, it sounds great to me. Two, it concerns me because with all the items I'm managing and all the hotkeys I have made and all the things I'm doing, like I feel like my keyboard is busting at the seams.
And honestly, I think they actually thought of that when they thought of it. Like I said, I don't think it's going to change your endgame rotation at all. A lot of this stuff being brought back is more flavor stuff.
You just think it's just flavor,
like Eyes of the Beast.
Yeah,
like stuff that people don't use anymore. Like,
yeah, I mean, I do miss like I liked a lot of the like kind of CC like kind of quality of life when you were out soloing items that they did remove, and I think you could bring some of those back and make things better.
And these are like in a lot of cases, not all of them. Like shamans are getting totems back, like totems the way they were.
Yeah,
like that's a very different story. But like in most cases, I think in like a lot of the cases that we've seen from what's going to happen is just like. These aren't going to fundamentally change your end game experience at all. In terms of you're not going to need another hotbar. You're not going to need to add a bunch of slots. Like it's going to be a very like utility case use of maybe one or two skills. Gotcha. This is not going to alter your, I don't know, your combat rogue rotation in the slightest.
And there's not a new class.
No new class.
No new class.
No, but Death Knight's forever for all of the allied races, I believe.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
And the first question I asked you when you tried to explain the game to me when you came back from your trip was I was like, with these new kind of places you can go and allegiances you can make, I was like, is this the end of the Horde versus Alliance? And you were like, no, which I do think is worth. It's been talked about a lot in the community that they would get rid of the Horde versus Alliance.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite clear we're not fighting each other in this not like we were in BFA, which we really didn't fight each other anyway. If you want to really get.
Well, I mean, I kind of love that there's not a new class and some other things that are missing from this particular game. I really hope, and I mean this, I really hope Blizzard takes some time and works on some quality of life issues that need to be addressed in the larger game. I loved War Mode. It was a great addition, but the fact that the instancing was kind of garbage, people being trapped on server shards that I think are not helping the overall experience. I mean, literally when I go to mech, I'm like, what mech do I get today? And I walk in, and if I get a mech that has even numbers of Alliance and Horde characters, I'm like, I'm going to get to do the quest today. If I come in, which I don't get to choose, if I walk in and it's one where it's crawling with the other faction that's like 16 to 1 of them, I go, I can't do anything in here. There's no amount of like, unless I go and like recruit a bunch of people to go fight and do a bunch of PvP that way, there's no way to stop the overflowing Horde or Alliance that are like owning your face. I think they have made a number of poor choices that have led, and I think there's a lot of quality of life issues I'd love to see them address with this one. I know I'm a little bit on my own little diatribe.
That's what we're here for.
But I think that is of note. Are we missing anything here? I know they're going to do more customization pieces, things like that, right?
Sure. I mean, again, a lot of that is going to tie right into the faction or covenant system. So you're going to be able to like look like a cool Revendreth vampire or a Maldraxian warlord or something like that, whatever you like.
Yeah, that's gonna be
or
cool.
A very boring Bastion angel thing.
See, you say that. I got to tell you, Bastion sounds kind of cool to me.
It's fine. It's like just like it's not exciting to me. All right.
Well, not all of us are pure evil.
I'm not evil.
I know you're not.
I swear.
It's just, I'd be interested. I really can't wait to explore those. I think that sounds really interesting. I mean, it sounds great. I hope the level squish goes well. I am concerned. There was a lot of times when they did that kind of stuff where you'd be like, oh, well, I can go farm the old raid, and it didn't scale well, and there's a bunch of other concerns about like the way that those things work out. I hope that works out.
Mm-hmm. Well, they still want you to be able to go farm the old school raids for your transmogs for sure.
I hope so, but they sometimes, like, at least the closest, like the BFA stuff, which you would normally
Right.
expect, like, I can now go farm BFA, maybe harder with the
Yeah.
level squish or whatever in place. Or at least that's a concern I have. It's on my list of, like, I hope they don't screw that up. Because
So, yeah.
I am looking forward to farming those a bit and things like that.
They're hoping they won't have to level squish again. So you're basically just supposed to get skills or mounts or something from every single level.
Yeah, which
That's
is
the idea.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did a good job with that. And there's no new talent tree item that I have to deal with other than these
No.
binds that just give me different powers,
soul
but it's not
binds,
like
yeah.
something that I'm
You're managing it and you're selecting things, but yeah, it's essentially where your end game progress. Like it is where artifacts or artifact power would be.
Okay, gotcha. All right, well, I think that's a good Shadowland. We're gonna go right into.
Oh,
We're just gonna transfer over to Hearthstone.
okay, that's a
Descent
game.
of Dragons.
That's also in the Warcraft universe.
Yes, it is. So, and part of our Blizzard-a-thon. You went and played this new expansion.
Correct.
What can you tell us about what they're doing in the Hearthstone space?
Well, for the new, so it's sort of a two-pronged sword here. I got to see both the new expansion and the auto battler game, Battlegrounds.
Which is the big new addition.
I would say so, yes.
Yes.
They only spent it was about 6 months in development, I think, before they're launching it out the gates here.
What? The original game was made in like 6 months too,
Sure,
wasn't it?
sure.
I mean, that's not unusual,
They're
I think, for
scrappy,
this
yeah.
team. Yeah.
So let's tackle the first one first. Descent of Dragons is the new Hearthstone expansion, and it looks really cool, but I think it definitely takes a second seat in terms of my own terms of excitement to the auto battler mode, since I'm really big into those.
Yes.
So Descent of Dragons, you get to basically, there's new side quests. If you're familiar with the main game, they have quests you fulfill. They have big effects. The side quests have smaller effects, but less to fulfill. So you can stuff them in any deck and sort of fulfill them. But the big thing is, of course, dragons. There's so many dragons in this. It's basically all dragons, and you're basically either siding with the evil granddaddy of all dragons, Galakron, or some of the other dragons, very popular in World of Warcraft. You know some of them, like Ysera and, Malagos and all these other guys.
Indeed.
So you can play all those big dragons. They all do different big dragon things. Or you can play the Galakron builds, which are basically using little cultists and disciples to chant and build up your big giant dragon. So when he comes out, he just basically wins you the game. I mean, it's not quite that simple, but that's the goal.
I mean, they're all cards, right, that you play
Of course.
that have like
So
various different
thematically,
effects.
yeah, you're
Yes.
like, oh, summon a little 2/2 priest guy. He's invoking Galakron. He's coming soon. So your opponent's like basically understands he's on this kind of clock. He doesn't want you to get enough invoking out so that when you play your Galakron, he is going to
Unstoppable,
annihilate him.
yeah.
Not unstoppable, but really, really powerful. There was an effect similar to this in Hearthstone a few years back with Cthulhu summoning.
Yeah.
Sort of the same idea in a different terms here.
So, there's a lot of different card games now.
There are.
You know what I mean? And there's
Tell
been
me about it.
And there have been a lot of different expansions that we've gone through now, and we've done PvE and everything like that,
Sure.
all along the way. Are they getting back and stepping back to what the core player wants? What is?
Well, that's the thing. I think, especially with this new edition, I think the core player is a lot of different things now, right?
Yeah.
I don't play much competitive anymore, but I do play the PvE a ton. Like the PvE is this dungeon crawl now.
Yeah.
It used to be like a sort of puzzles and puzzle solution kind of things, but once they turned it into that more roguelike dungeon crawl experience,
Yeah.
that sold me. And that's pretty much what I do in there. And I play some arena now and then, but you've basically got your choice of what you want to do. Are you a competitive player climbing the ladder? Or you want to do the PvE experience, which is really cool now, which is really, really good. Or do you want to do this new thing, the auto battler, which is completely new for Hearthstone. And it brings back a lot of the cool stuff that they were doing in some of that single player content, honestly. They get to reuse some of those heroes as heroes in this. They're obviously very different, but the characters and the personalities behind those heroes.
Well, explain more about the auto battler, please.
Sure. So this is, if you're not familiar with auto battlers, we've seen quite a few of them already. Teamfight Tactics, Dota Underlords, the original Dota Auto Chess.
Yeah.
RIP. We haven't seen the, so we've got those. This is basically Blizzard's take on that within Hearthstone. So using Hearthstone cards in a lot of cases to just in this sort of new format.
It looks
Right?
very different than the other ones.
Yes, because the other ones are really all about having 3D models fight.
Yes.
Right? And watching them fight it out. This one is more of a planning positioning. Certainly that's very important in those other games as well, but now you have Hearthstone positioning. Something you could never do is move minions from like area to area because you're going to have to select their order in order to have an effective battle. But before we even get there, it's hero-centric. So there are 24 different heroes you can get before a game. You get to pick one of two or three, depending on where you're at in the season pass thing kind of dealing. I know. So just basically you get to pick from a selection of heroes before the game.
Yeah.
They'll do different things. Some of them are really easy to figure out. Like if you're looking at the list, you're like, okay, this guy, whenever I get a beast, he makes the beast stronger. That's a really simple, easy one that is like, I'm going to play a beast deck. This probably because this guy buffs beast, right? So I'm going to look at that for beasts. Other ones are way more complicated and interesting. You've got like a lich who can take damage in order to give you more resources. So you can buy more powerful stuff and do more in a turn. You've got another guy who throws out hats. That one's really complicated, but I think is the highest skill test card in it. That's what one of the lead designers told me anyway.
Okay.
So it's 24 to hit from in this current pool. And basically they help you, like if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering or any other card game where you do a draft experience where your first card can really push you in a direction. That's kind of like a guiding force for your construction. Then you get into the game. Here's one of the really good things about this auto battler that I like right off the bat. The other auto battlers all force you to sit on a stack of income in order to play correctly.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to play the most efficiently, if you want the most chances of
winning. You would
winning,
intentionally lose matches
Correct.
to hold a resource to have a better round later.
That's exactly correct. They all involve that element. You want to get to 50 gold and you want to sit on that so that you get the most income per turn. That doesn't exist here. So you're encouraged to use all your resources every turn for a variety of different things, but there's no point in sandbagging.
Gotcha.
It's encouraged.
That sounds good. That sounds like a good
because you look at
addition.
it and like other people are like, well, there's a lot of skilling income. I'm like, there is, but at the same point, incoming is basically just sitting there and hoping you don't get damaged for like 5 to 6 rounds of some of those games.
Yeah.
Like I play Underlords matches where it's like, all right, next round. I'm just waiting for my stack to get to 50
Waiting
so I can
for the
start
fun
playing.
to happen.
I'm
Yeah,
waiting
yeah.
to play,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
so
yeah.
that element is gone. So that's an interesting route that we'll have to see how it turns out. But I think it's really cool.
And how many players is it?
So it's just like all the other auto battlers. That is eight
Okay.
players.
All right.
Basically, you win if you hit the top 4. You lose if you hit the bottom 4. There is a ranked ladder system already, so you're getting elo up and down. Another really cool thing that this one does is there's the concept of upgrading the pool that you draw from in these auto battlers. So when you upgrade that pool, when you pay money to pay resources to upgrade that pool, you'll get better draws, right? Higher star units. They go up to 6 stars in this game. So in this one, if you don't activate the upgrading the pool, the cost of it goes down 1 per round. So you can be more aggressive in taking units and putting them on the board, and that'll go down naturally, encouraging you to, you can buy it when it's cheap instead of saying, I have to save in order to get this extra. I don't want to play units. I don't want to buy units or put them on the board because guess what? I just want to keep teching up so I can get better units.
Okay, gotcha.
So it encourages you to, this is honestly a very complicated game to explain.
But no,
It's easy to see.
It sounds like they're trying to add some Hearthstone elements to it too.
And that's the thing. The majority of the card base, not all of them, are cards from Hearthstone, but they function very differently here. Like cards with Battle Cry are basically like one-shot mechanics. Even, you put them on the board, they do a thing, and then you're going to sell that card right back instead of leaving it on the board. So it's like a power-up almost, which is very different than how they function in the regular game. Because you've only got 7 slots, and you want to make every one of them count. And you can sell and move things around. Basically, right now, you've got all kinds of different meta decks, like mechs, or the easy, obvious ones, mechs, murlocs, beasts, demons, right?
Yeah.
Those are the 4.
Oh, so obvious. I was saying that to myself before we started.
All right.
Yeah.
And then dragons are coming, so I'm told, as one of the other new factions. But that's easy, but there's all kinds of other weird stuff you can do too. One of my favorite builds that I'm playing with right now is a menagerie build. You remember the curator from Curious and the Menagerie?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the menagerie build is more of like
A menagerie, is that? Yeah.
right. You get a murloc, you get a beast, you get one of everything,
Yeah.
and they all get buffed up every turn from this one unit. It can get pretty out of control, as can every build. You can do all kinds of really interesting things that you're like, wow, I didn't think about this card that way when it's played in Hearthstone because it's completely different functionality
exactly.
here.
Oh, okay, cool. And so does it have a separate, like your cards that you've collected? Or
You don't need anything.
you don't
Free to
need
play. Everything's different every game.
Huh, okay, cool. Well, it sounds like a great addition to the series and gives you another option. Like you
I think
said,
with any auto battler, man, some of these are like feast or famine, hit hard off the bat and then fall off. So we got to see where this one ends up. But I played a few rounds of it and I'll admit, at BlizzCon, I just kept, like, this is out in a couple days. I definitely shouldn't wait, use my time on this demo again. So,
Yeah.
But I went back and played it again.
So you were at BlizzCon this last weekend. How was it?
Correct. Oh, BlizzCon is
A blast.
always it is. It's always a blast.
Yeah. How was the Hilton?
The Hilton was the Hilton.
Was
man.
it out of control? Was there like were they still like clubbing it up in there?
It's too much for me. I can't go to the Hilton anymore. I now go to the Marriott. So if you're looking for me, that's where I'm at. Because the Hilton's too much.
It's a madhouse.
It really is, and that has not changed. It was even more of a madhouse this year.
And so, what were the highlights? Did you go to any panels in person? Did you watch any of the esports?
I tried to go to the Diablo panel for the Diablo What's Next panel, but I couldn't, and I got sick on day 2 because I think I ate this.
Because you drank too much on day 1?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just double checking.
It's because I ate this really nasty breakfast at one of the hotel breakfasts, which remain unnamed.
I've had that happen.
But it only put me down for a few hours. But
How were the food trucks?
they were great, or so I'm told. I never.
You didn't eat
After that experience with the breakfast, I
you
tried to
just
keep
kind of
it.
get away from that. And how was the cosplay?
Cosplay's great every year.
I know, but
I
I
didn't
mean,
get to see it. That's the thing. When I'm there on the ground, I rarely get. I did demos mostly the whole time and a few interviews. That was what I was doing, as terms of on the show floor.
Gotcha. That's just a shame because I do enjoy walking around and checking that stuff out. Did you buy anything in the shop?
No, the line for the store is really long, as you probably know.
I've only been to one BlizzCon.
I did take a bunch of,
That's crazy.
Shay messaged me and he's like, you got to get me some Instagram photos. So I shot him a bunch. I went around and took pictures of all the statues and stuff. So I got those.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And they had the press area again, so you could just go play the games pretty easily, right?
Now, that might have been how I got sick. I don't know, because they do have that demo area, but nobody was willing to leave the Diablo units.
Oh, yeah.
So, they were getting camped on for a very long time. I'm not going to, call out any particular people, but it was unplayable there. You had to go down to the floor to play it, which is fine. You don't need to wait in line if you're media. You get to go right in, and that's fine. But I did have to play on a real demo station, and you know how that goes. So I probably got I'm probably dead.
I mean, every con has some kind of sickness that finds
Correct.
its way around. It's
Correct.
not unique to BlizzCon.
No, I feel a lot better today.
I do want to point out one of the things I thought that happened this weekend that was super cool, and I'm really bummed out. I love the MDI, which is the Mythic Dungeon Invitational. I have not watched that yet. I need to go back and watch that. I like the arena stuff for WoW. I'm interested in watching those things. But one of the things that did happen was that the Hearthstone tournament this year had the winner was Xiaomin Li, and she was the first female winner of the Grandmaster Global Finals. So I just want to make sure we gave a shout out to her. That's super amazing. One of the quotes she put on her went out on Twitter was, "I want to say to all the girls out there that have a dream for esports competition, if you want to do it and believe in yourself, you should just forget your gender and go for it." Kudos to her. That's awesome. I think that's one of the best things that happened at BlizzCon. Even out of all these amazing games that we just covered, I am super thrilled for her and for the victory. And I think she went 4-0. I mean, she just crushed the competition, and I think that's super awesome. Well, Dan?
Hi.
Thank you for being on the show. We have made a monster of a show. That is the end of our Blizzard coverage for this week. I'm sure we'll probably revisit it sometimes in the next few episodes. Also, two other podcasts.
We do have a lot of stuff coming from all the games on the site. So
we have tons of stuff going on YouTube. We have tons of stuff going on the site. New gameplays today. Rapid fire.
There is a rapid fire with Kaplan himself.
So we got all kinds of good. So that's all kinds of great. So thank you for coming on the show, talking about these games. I'm super excited about WoW and Diablo and Overwatch, and I will try to go be confused in Hearthstone. I can't wait. So thanks everybody for being on the show. Next up, we have a community email, which we'll go through and address some things in there. I think it'll be an interesting conversation. After that, we will have an interview with Summerfall Studios, Liam Esler and David Gaider, about Chorus, an adventure musical, which I'm thrilled about, that someone's making a musical game, which I think I want to learn more. I want to understand. I did do some research on this, and there was some pretty crazy songs going on, It's got Austin Wintory's in like doing the soundtrack. Troy Baker's involved.
Of course he is.
It's one of those things. So stay tuned. We've got more to come. Hello, and welcome to the Game Informer Show. I am your host, Andy McNamara. We are going to do the community email section, and I realized last week I did not ask for your actual feedback and community participation in this because I'm apparently bad at my job. So this week, I'm going to start off by making sure I say, please send your questions to podcast@gameinformer.com. We'd love to hear what you think. We'd love to hear your questions, anything you'd like us to discuss. Last week was the first show where I did this. We kind of went pretty in depth with a lot of things where we started to try to, I wanted to keep the questions down, but really try to spend more time on them, talk about more things, kind of tell more stories. I'm going to try to do the same thing this week, but I'm going to also throw in a little bit more breezy questions because thus far this show is ridiculously huge. We've talked about Blizzard, we've talked about Death Stranding. It's very long, and I am trying to keep this within some kind of reasonable length. And I know everyone has been super nice on Twitter and said, Andy, no, we love it when it's long. But I believe you, but I do want to kind of keep it reined in a little bit as I talk for too long as I discuss keeping it reined in. So let's move forward. Today on my panel, my lovely panel, is Matt Miller.
Hello.
Ben Reeves.
That's me.
Dan the Jacket Tack.
It's great to be here. I don't love that nickname.
Well, you shouldn't have said that, Dan, because now
I'll respect that. I can't. This new jacket that you got recently is hard to not notice.
That's the idea.
I get it. I'm just saying that it's if you wear it, you're gonna get comments.
That's fair.
That's just
you
what
know
I'm
what?
throwing
That's
out
fair.
there.
Let's do it. Let's see how it works out.
Dan Jacket.
We'll workshop that one.
Yeah, there's something there.
And
Something
then
there.
finally,
Ben, you're almost there.
Finally, in the booth, we have Leo Vader. How are you doing back there, Leo?
Please call me the shirt.
Oh, the shirt. Oh,
because he always wears a shirt.
yes,
I do nearly every day.
This is quite the wardrobe we've assembled
It really
here.
is.
Yes, it's very very amazing. So let's get into the questions. First question from Jacob. And I may have removed where he's from. So Jacob, wherever you're from, we respect it. I've been playing a lot of Modern Warfare since I got it, and I really enjoy how they tried to mix up the feel of Call of Duty. Guns feel, look, and sound better than ever, but I can't bring myself to love this one. I've been having some UI bugs on all the daily challenges and missions. Most of the time they aren't tracked properly, even worse. My progress gets erased entirely. It's really frustrating that I can't complete an easy daily, let alone whole missions being deleted. Has anyone else experienced this? Andy, how was your campaign on the PC? The cutscene stuttered for me. That was annoying. I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit there. Activision said these problems are on the radar, so hopefully they'll be fixed soon. Let's talk about Modern Warfare, which we talked about in depth last week. But I want to start off by saying the UI bugs, actually, the UI in the game, Dan, I know you've been playing. I don't know if you guys have been playing yet. The UI in the game is only okay.
I would say it's only okay, and I've been having UI bugs.
Have you been having it too?
It's like complete a cyber attack and win. So I did that 3 times and still didn't count for the quest. I don't know if I got. Did I get the reward and not have it visually represented? It was hard to tell. I don't know.
It is really hard to tell because first of all, it's buried within the UI. So you finish and you need to go through a series of. This is like old school web design kind of things. Where it's if you have to do 5 clicks to get to the answer, that's too far. And right now in this particular Call of Duty UI, it's things are pretty deep, and it's a little bit confusing. There were a lot of times where I was like, "What's this button do? Oh my gosh, this is how I join a party!" I had really seriously no idea what a lot of things did. So I have not had that problem though. But you know what? I'm really bad at completing those missions every day. So that might be on me.
Well, that's why I like the longer term missions.
Yes.
If they ever delete my progress, though, I'm going to throw my computer out the window because those take forever to do.
They do take forever.
That'll teach them.
Yeah,
right.
Call me when you
teach 'em.
do that, so I'm there to catch it.
I'll let you know.
I could use a new computer.
And as far as the stuttering goes on the cutscenes, I did have a little bit of problem. I've seen people that have major problems with the cutscenes. I only had every once in a while I'd get one hiccup that would then lead to everything being fine, but the audio being ahead of the video. So I had the lip syncing was way off. And that happened to me pretty often. And as I discussed
That's
on
immersion breaking, I would expect.
it is. And as I had the problem last week, I had every time one of my friends logged on any other Blizzard games, were over the faces of a lot of people during my cutscenes. And wouldn't go away. They just stayed there. So that was really annoying. But I do want to talk about a couple other, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about, like, right now, the 725 shotgun is ridiculous in this game. We're going to go a little bit deeper, which is and by the way, I'd actually like to say, I think all the shotguns are a little ridiculous right now in the game. You are able to snipe with a shotgun and, like, imagine, I know you play a lot of Destiny, Miller.
Yeah.
If people could snipe with a shotgun from, I'm not even kidding, 20 yards away and take someone out. It's 20 yards. I'm not even joking. And it's
snipe-
one shot. It is a one shot.
You can one-shot a guy from 20 yards. You can't like, you have to, like, lob, like, a mortar almost to hit from that distance.
I've watched I watch videos of pros that are just like, they are throwing their controllers over, and I've watched, like, and these are guys who, like, someone walks in the room and this is a guy, this isn't me. This is a guy who can laser an M4 right at someone's head, and the moment they walk into the room, this is pro level reaction, starts hitting in the head. There's no flinch on the shotgun guy on the replay. He just walks in like, what's up? Boom! And, like, across the room, you're on top of a building in a warehouse, blown away.
Yeah, dude should have checked his corners.
So can they? I mean, speaking from the perspective of somebody who's into a different PvP experience in Destiny, they would just turn that gun off. Have they talked about doing that?
Or turn
not-
the game off.
I mean,
Yeah.
they have done updates, which, by the way, I'm appreciative of their updates, and I know that the time when a game launches, it's very difficult. I'm not trying to dismiss how hard game dev is, but sometimes when something is one of many things that's that broken in a game that a lot of people love the multiplayer for, and I mean, it's a cacophony of people and players that are like, this gun is ridiculous.
Like, just turn it off for a while until you fix it. I mean, I understand that it takes time to do a rebalance, but, like, they should be able to just turn the gun off, right?
I would argue that sometimes when it's at this point, you can go like, look, we can just take the length of the shells and just turn it back and not worry. If it's already out of whack, I don't think you have to worry. I think you could be okay with making a quick fix that doesn't get tested as much as you would. But I mean, a 725, I'd like to point out, is one of many problems. A lot of people are really mad about the Claymore. I've seen streamers literally, Dr. Disrespect, I think he was like going to quit the game and never play it again based over the Claymore. A lot of people are frustrated with that because a lot of, like, old moves where, like, if you ran past it, that you could take partial damage. It's just kind of basically one-shotting you. The Riot Shield, I got to tell you, my experience, Dan, I don't know about you, I have such a difficult time killing people with the Riot Shield. It's hilarious.
I did mention this to you the other day. Like, basically, I just play with the Molotovs at all times. Anybody pulls out a Riot Shield, Molotov, they're dead. That's it. I mean, yes, if they get me with the knife, that's another issue completely, right? Because that's a different, that's a different weapon.
So people know there are people that they take a Riot Shield, which has unlimited hit points. You cannot break a Riot Shield. And they take knives. So they, like, you come around the corner and your gun, you're like, hey, and then there's a person who's just with their shield down, and you're like, what do I do? And Dan's right. If you have a grenade and you can throw it at their feet, that works 100% of the time, great. But if you've already used your grenade,
then you die.
You're like, what do I do? I run away. That's number one. What I do is I run away. But what happens is I run away and they have the knife, and the second they turn around, they throw a knife in my back, which one-shots you and you die. So if you try to approach them or shotgun them or shoot at the shield, they just LOL. And by the way, I've gotten so many, like, LOL, raffle, like, messages from people because I can't kill them with this stupid shield. And I'd like to point out, too, both the shotgun and the Riot Shield are not allowed in competitive play. In competitive Call of Duty, these things are like, oh, we're not going to let that happen in competitive play. That's ridiculous, because they are ridiculous. I also think the Claymores may not be allowed in competitive play. I'm not entirely sure.
If they take away the shotgun, how are we going to kill anybody?
I like
True
the
enough.
idea of, like, army soldiers in a real combat situation yelling LOL and rifle and stuff like that. I feel like that'd be a good, like, way to get into your, like, enemy's head in a weird way.
Psychological warfare.
I think it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it very much is.
Yeah, the chat has been really spicy on this one. Like, way above the sort of stereotypical Xbox child screaming into the mic. There's just been some really
more screaming.
amped up people in this one. Let me tell you, like, just screaming stuff like, clan war. It's just like,
well, I will say this, like, I get it when someone pulls the trigger faster than me and like, does a better headshot than me. Like, that all makes sense to me. My wife and the dog have looked at me weird when I have screamed, "There's no way that shotgun should shoot!" I mean, I've literally, I
Like
have.
you scared the dog.
I have been tilted.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah,
I
yeah.
have been tilted by this shotgun at a level that is unbecoming of me. But it's happened, and I just wish it goes down the path of like we just went through a whole month. I just went through a whole month of playing Clash Royale. It was completely out of balance with the Switch, and the developer's like, "Yep, we know it's out of balance." And I get this feeling from the COD team right now that like they know it. They have to know.
Yeah. I mean, they're playing it probably more than most people are.
Yes, they have to know. They have to see the stats on this thing.
I mean, you've only got 2 shots, right? You know, let's just let the guns let it ride for a couple months.
Dan, okay, let me ask you this question, Dan. What gun are you using tonight when you play Modern Warfare?
It's a classic shotgun, classic take on the shotgun.
Oh, is it? Is it
just-
perhaps a 725?
It is with a choke on it. You know, like it's
Oh.
a nice medium range. They just funnel all those, just boom, just. You know, take a guy to mid-range. We'll call it mid-range.
Okay,
I'm not sniping
you're
anyone
really
with it.
going with mid-range.
Sounds like you just found a really unique setup for yourself.
Yeah, I'm using the gunsmith, 50 attachments each gun. You can really customize your play experience. That's what I'm doing, you know, just tinkering with
I
attachments.
think I invited the wrong person to this panel.
Tack, what are you gonna do when you play in Pro League and that gun's banned,
Oh.
dude?
Man, then I'm out of luck.
Well, thank you, Jacob, for the question. We really appreciate it. Next question is, I'm super excited to have Andy host the podcast. Thank you. It brings up a lot of fond old memories of Gamer Guerrilla Radio, which I thought about at one point to maybe bring that and ruin the Game Informer show and bring that back. That's my own little weird thing. I only did like 2 or 3 episodes, and then I figured out that making podcasts is hard, and what am I doing
Takes a
again?
lot of
I'm
work.
making podcasts again. But we're not bringing back Gamer Guerrilla Radio, but much respect for bringing that up. Anyways, I just wanted to write in and say that I agree 100% with Miller that I find wholesome and genuinely heroic protagonists in games refreshing nowadays. I'm all for a well-written anti-hero, but it seems that for at least a decade now, games, and a lot of movies and other media, have been obsessed with the dark, gritty, and morally gray. Reflecting on it, I think one of the reasons I enjoyed Insomniac's Spider-Man so much last year is that it felt so damn good to play as an honest-to-goodness hero. Are Miller and I just dweebs? Are there more people in the GI office who wouldn't mind seeing a less grimdark cynicism in their games? Joseph from Madison, Wisconsin. Thank you so much. That's a great question.
I think you were one of the only people that liked Spider-Man, right?
I think so. Well, first of all, I'd like to say, what's this gentleman's name?
You say that right as I set down my sheet.
Yeah.
That would be Joseph from
so
Madison, Wisconsin.
I don't know if Joseph is a dweeb.
He sounds
I am.
like one.
Well, you know, we all might have a little dweebiness. Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, we talked about this last week. I think he's responding to
Yes.
that comment where I don't know. It's not that I don't ever like stuff that's a little bit more kind of morally nebulous, let's say, in my video games or in other entertainment. It's just that I feel like since the 90s, there's been a steady ramp up of that becoming just the go-to trope, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody, it feels like there's a lot of characters that need to somehow have this bleak backstory in order to be taken seriously.
I bet it goes back further than that even.
I'm
sure
sure
stuff in the 80s, like
absolutely.
Taxi Driver
I mean,
in the 70s.
the anti-hero has always been a part of narrative
Fiction
structure
forever.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. But it's definitely in vogue. I would
Yes.
agree with that. It's been in vogue for a very long while.
And certainly in video games where you've got to find an excuse to have your character killing
Murdering
thousands of people. It's gonna it just fits.
I think that's fair, but I think that for me, there is something like to put it in a slightly different context. I think being a really good writer of the Superman comic is very hard.
Yes.
It's hard to take a character who is relatively pure and relatively like just truly heroic and make it interesting. And I think it can sometimes be a crutch to have them be this sort of dark backstory. It also means that sometimes you have like really overly simplistic hero characters when they go that way. And so when you have a character like, to use his example of Spider-Man, where they can take a character and do something interesting with them, but also have them be, a good guy.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. And I appreciate writers and designers who find ways to make those kinds of characters interesting.
And I don't know why that is. Like, why is it that somebody, he kind of hints at it here, like, if you're like that, you're a dweeb. You know, like because you're a morally upright hero, you're somewhat like naive or something, or
You're kind of
less-
talking like a dweeb right now. Right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
But you know what I'm getting
yeah,
at? Like,
yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's probably harder to write a character that's like morally upstanding and wholesome. But I wonder if there's certain, I don't know, something broken inside of us that we like crave that.
it's
or we-
less cool?
We feel like
Yeah,
it's less cool. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's a great anecdote I come back to for one of my old favorite shows, which was Star Trek: The Next Generation.
No way.
Yes, a show I really like.
That's
and one of the
dweeb.
things that if you go back and I'm a total dweeb, I fess up. But one of the things that if you dig into that show and its writing that was really interesting is that there was this insistence from Gene Roddenberry in the early seasons that the characters wouldn't have the sort of conflicts with each other that we have in modern day society.
Yeah.
And so it forced the writers to do other things, which was very challenging. And that constraint made for, in many cases, some very interesting storytelling. Sometimes wasn't perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
But my point being that I think that the anti-hero character, the dark backstory thing, it does allow for conflict, which, you know, good storytelling has conflict. And it's an easy place to go to find that conflict. And if you don't have that, you gotta think very creatively about where do we find the conflict in this story if it's not fundamental to this to our protagonist's central drive.
Yeah, and like Spider-Man, I think Peter Parker is the example of like on the outside, he's very positive. You know what I mean? Spider-Man is very heroic. It's when you look to his home life, right, that you see like where his problems and like his strife comes from. You know what I mean? But he does a good job of staying true to his standards, right, and going out there and fighting for justice and trying to represent those things, which I think makes him interesting and a great character. And I think it's one of those things too that when you talk about games that have choice, you know, when you have that kind of renegade paragon choices, it is sometimes easier to write things that are on the extremes, right, where there is definitely a lot more kind of gray in there. But you can also be, you know, what is it, chaotic good?
Yeah.
Am I getting that right? Am I getting my
good D&D
D&D
reference there?
Yeah. You know, I think that we could use more characters that fall on that side. That it's definitely something I think is, I feel like is lacking. And, you know, I don't have the data in front of me or anything like that, but I would agree. I think we do tend to go towards the dark side.
In games that offer that choice, I actually find it even more compelling to go the good route because you can see the allure of going down the dark path. And the fact that you're sort of denying that to yourself, there's a sort of special thrill to like, well, yeah, I could have gotten that cool
item by killing
that guy.
doing
But
that
you know
horrible
what?
thing.
Like, I'm going to take a stand. I'm not going to do that. And I think for some people who aren't dweebs like me, they're like, that's stupid. Get the cool ring in your video game.
You get off by doing good, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
I'm with you, Miller. I'm playing Red Dead 2 with story mode again now that it's out on PC, and I was a very good boy, or as good as a boy as you can be in that game. Arthur Morgan, obviously deeply flawed. but
Yeah.
There's a choice early on where you choose to save a man who's dangling off a cliff or let him die, and obviously I saved him the first time, and I was like, I'm going to try to kill him just to make this run a little different.
Yeah.
Didn't like it.
Yeah.
Didn't feel good.
Didn't feel good.
Feel bad about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I also love when games like that do that too, where it's like, can you suck out the poison or whatever? And you're like, yeah, I guess I'll help you with that. You know what I mean? You're like, I don't know that I'm crazy about this, but I don't want you to die. I'll go ahead and do that. And then I think, if I remember correctly, you run into him in town later, and he helps you out, right? Like that it comes around. And I always love it in games when that does, there's a payoff for doing good. But it is definitely one of those things that's very difficult in games. I know I have one particular instance where in Skyrim, I'm always a goody-goody. I try to be good. I always try to be good. And then there's a time they're like, hey, there's someone up on that pedestal. You should go check them out. And I check it out. And I'm like, oh, this person's in a bad shape. And they're chained down. They're like, oh, here, hold this dagger. And you could fix their problem. Or you could kill them and have this ring. And I was like, oh, man, that's a nice ring. And because they had, like, normally I'd have been like, I don't need your stupid ring. Because they had gotten me, they pushed me all the way to the edge.
And nobody else
right
was there.
No one else was there. It was all, and I was like, all right. You know what I mean?
Who's going to know if I murder this helpless person?
And I murdered that person. I really did. And I felt bad about it, but it was slightly liberating for the rest of the game because I'm like, well, I killed that person, so everybody's in trouble now. Like,
no.
I am.
Did it start you down the dark path, and forever did it dominate your destiny?
Correct. Yes, I went down that path because I normally am very paladin-like. I like to play paladins. I like to be, I try to help people. I don't know what's wrong with me.
That's why I still haven't murdered anybody. I hear it's a slippery slope. As soon as you do one, you just want to keep
feel
going.
like you keep murdering. I mean,
Yeah.
that's been my experience.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know. I'm not going to try.
Well, you get force lightning if you do that, right?
Yes.
Oh, man. Now I'm tempted. All right, Dan. Can I show
All right,
you
well, it's
something
going to
behind
give
the
you force
building?
lightning. Hey, it's cool.
So Dan, are you a good guy?
I
Bad
am.
guy?
In video games, I almost always pick the right choice. And I'd like to see the stats on this, actually, because I think everybody does. Like, it just...
Oh, it's definitely not everybody because I won't name any names, but there's some people on our staff who don't.
Like, once in a while, sure, you do it just to see what it is. And it's just like, you know what? That wasn't even satisfying. Like, I'm not feeling good about being the bad guy. It's just like... And the choices are always so, like, again, they're black and white. It's like, burn the village or save the village. What are you going to do? Like, it's like... I'm not really interested in killing these people. Like, what is? You're not really faced with like any real. I just default to the good choice, and I think most people do. Like, not out of being like a good, just because the other option is so repulsive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struck by that. I mean, I think we all go to games, at least in part, to have a departure from the reality we're experiencing every day, and I have enough morally gray stuff in
other things.
Just looking at life around me and
Or
the
the
news
newspaper.
and like
Some
anything.
dark closets in your life.
Yeah,
man.
that like I don't know. I it's nice for me when I sit down to play a game to have things sometimes be pretty straightforward.
I'd like to point out I loved that in The Walking Dead, the Telltale game, when it gave you the stats of what you chose or what other people chose. I wish more games did that.
Yeah,
Actually, I
that's
think
cool.
I was one of my favorite things in that game. I was like, that's cool. And then it also did me the, did I make the right choice? Like when you were on the wrong side.
Yeah, when
like,
you're like
everybody
only
else chose
5% saved this guy.
What?
Yeah.
And they really hated that guy.
Yeah.
The really interesting question. Thank you so much again. I appreciate it, Joseph. That's a great one. So, next question. Hey, Andy Mack and the Dan Tack Wolf Pack. Do you like that name better?
The Dantak Wolf Pack?
See,
where does this
Oh, wait,
come
I'm sorry.
from?
No, the Dan Tack Whack Pack. I am sorry.
Whack
I read
Pack.
that.
Whack
Whack Pack.
Pack?
Yes.
Where is this coming from?
I don't know.
Well, okay. Here's
Ben
your choice.
Hansen send this in?
You've got a choice between Whack Pack and the jacket. Which is it
We're
going to
going
be?
with the jacket.
We're going with the jacket.
Dan Tackett.
I'm not
That's
sure
the way
what
to go.
the Whack Pack is. I'm really curious if you want to let me know.
I don't
about
think
the-
we want to know.
What
All
about the
right.
jacket packet?
I like that one too.
There we go.
Now we're just on a roll here.
The
Sounds pretty
jacket,
good.
packet, tacket.
Wow, this is some serious rhyme scheme. All right, back to the question. Have you ever been in the top 1% of a game? I was in 3 Call of Duties. I'll go with Schnikes. I have no life. Kevin in West Hartford, Connecticut. I think this question, which I'm going to get it down to and ask everyone here, is like, what game have you ever been like elite at? Let's talk about. I mean, I know you can say like I was really good at Ninja Gaiden back in the NES days, and there wasn't like things that could show that you were actually elite. It's okay if you're going to point one of those out and say that I was really great at that, but I'd love to hear what game are you awesome at? Because this guy's obviously the guy who's killing me with guns very quickly in Call of Duty.
725?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Ben.
I feel like I spend most of my time playing like single player stuff, but I do remember like it was Geometry Wars 2, I think, when that came out. I was in the top 100, which is for
That's
me
pretty
very
good.
impressive.
Yeah,
but I mean that was early on too. It was like before like it was widespread.
You mean before it released to the public?
Yeah, yeah.
As in there were 83 players,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you were 83.
I was number 83, yeah.
That is a really satisfying feeling when you're doing reviews and they have a leaderboard and you're like, I am good at this game.
Yeah, wow.
I'm the 20th best player of this game in the world.
Out of the 50 reviewers playing this game, I am 25.
Yeah. All
Right in the middle. I think I got pretty darn good, if only because an overinvestment of time. I got pretty good at Resogun, which is to this day I hold up. If you haven't played Resogun, one of the best arcade games ever made on PlayStation.
You love that developer across the
I
board.
do. It makes me sad that they have had to move away from that style of game because I think they did it with a level of precision and mastery that Housemarque we're talking about here, that really nobody else has done. They took the old arcade formulas of space shooters and twin stick shooters and stuff like that and just did it awesome. And Resogun is, I think, my favorite of their games. And I got to the point where I had some scores up there in the like, there were thousands of players, and I was up in the like, I on that stage I'm 13th right now.
That's really amazing,
right?
Especially if a game that's in live.
Yeah,
like out there. That's very impressive.
And then they would, somebody would get past me, and
yeah,
it's an endless struggle.
Is that why you murdered so many people? Because you would go kill the people who beat
I
you?
had to go track down the people who beat me in Resogun.
Yeah, I get it now.
But I don't think there's too many games like that I've like really. I mean, to get there, I think you got to be spending a lot of time on any game.
Yeah, and it's tough sometimes for us to do that.
Yeah.
But I know I've overspent time on certain games. How about Leo?
Red Dead Online on PS4 before the controls rework they did.
Yeah.
When it was still moving pretty slowly. They had a bonus XP week in the Make It Count playlist, which is kind of their battle royale, but only with throwing weapons. And you could use this ability card called Paint It Black, where you mark enemies like Deadeye in the single-player game, and then with throwing weapons, once you throw it, it homes in on them. If they're marked, it will kill them. And so you can do it with diving and pretty much survive infinitely. And a lot of people don't know about using ability cards, especially in that mode, so essentially I was winning more than I was losing in like 16-person playlists.
So you've had an exploit, is what you're saying.
Exactly, yeah.
And took advantage of it.
And I made a lot of money.
Yeah, I bet.
And I get the sense there was probably a lot of giggling if you had like just like jumping randomly and throwing and honing it and like knifing people
They had
in the head.
absolutely no chance.
Yeah.
It was the best.
That's amazing.
That's why people love those shotguns in Call of Duty.
I
It's
know,
like-
it is
it's
true.
like-
Everybody
It is true.
just laughs,
They have a
laughs,
chance.
and laughs.
They could shoot you first with their shotgun.
They could shoot exactly with their shotgun.
I didn't
That
say
is the
that.
only
The shotguns are totally balanced.
Dan, the Dan Tack, the whack pack. Okay.
Yeah.
Dan, you are one of the best gamers here at
Yeah.
Game Informer. You're
Thank you.
Yeah, you really are. You're very, very good at games. So you have to have something. You have to have a story.
I do, but I wonder which one I should do. I think.
Wow.
Wow. I think the
He's
most,
so humble, too.
Yeah,
I think the most interesting one is surprisingly World of Warcraft. I had the world first Karen Bloodhoof kill. I mean, he's not like a super crazy raid boss, but we did have to kill the whole city. Whenever he was put into, because he wasn't in the game originally. Like they put him in, and we're like, well, we got a server first on Kazakh, but we want a world first, so we're gonna go after Karen before anybody else can get him. So as soon as he got put into the what's that stupid town? Thunder Bluff.
Yep, Thunder
So
Bluff.
as soon as he showed up there, we're like, all right, everybody go, we're going, and we just killed
murdered
the whole city, including him. He was pretty tough.
Yeah, there
lot
was
of
a
damage.
time when the city raids were really hard.
Yes.
We got to go back. I mean, now they're pretty doable, but back in the day, like guards were super powered, and it took your computer almost falling to its knees under strain, but it was fun.
So yeah, it's difficult to quantify percentages in that. Like 1%, I don't know if I was in the top 1%, but I was in like top 3.
Wait, why did the
2.
difficulty of the boss make your computer struggle more?
Because so
many people.
You
A lot of
basically
people.
you'd bring like 120
okay.
people,
I
and
get
it would
it.
be like the lag would go through the roof. It would be part of your computer, part the servers that you were on, just not able to take that many people. But essentially, for a lot of events in early WoW, like AQ and things like that, when they opened, when you put that many people in one area before there was instancing, it just like everything. I mean, it would turn into like one frame.
Yes.
One frame, and you'd be alive and then be dead. Like there's really lots of, just it'd be instant.
Kind of like life.
Yes.
That's right.
And we
frame then
didn't
you're gone.
use like the server to do it or either. We had just the guild, so I think it was around 40 people. There's a video of it up on YouTube somewhere.
Oh, nice.
I go back
So
and watch it for nostalgia
Clean,
sometimes.
Yeah.
clean kill.
It was clean. Well, I mean, we killed a lot of
Yeah.
horror. This was back again. This was when I played Alliance, which is sacrilege to me now.
Yes.
This is before Burning Crusade, but yeah,
I can't believe you
one of those
admitted
times.
that on our show that you played Alliance.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
I was a
Yeah.
You
different
wanted to play the
person
bad
then.
guy, huh?
Yeah.
I was different. No, to be. If you really want to know why I switched to Horde, it was because
It was
of
for a
blood,
girl.
It was because of Blood Elves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I mean, basically, yes.
Yeah. For me, I had there was a time in EverQuest where we were really good.
There you go.
And there was a time, I kid you not, we were on a server that we did not let anyone else kill any bosses for years. We had put together a system where we would. This is before you couldn't. There was no voice chat. I mean, so we had put together a series of like phone numbers where we would call each other in the middle of the night to wake up and be like, "No, the Europeans are not getting this kill. We're taking it." And we would rally the troops, no matter the day or time, and we would go and ruin their day. Over and over again. And we did this when there were 2 dragons, when there were just 2 dragons you had to go kill until they opened up larger raids. We dominated those raids on our server. We'd broken in the top 10. We might have been broken in the top 5 of like we were up there with Fires from Heaven and some of those other guys that were famous, went on to work on WoW. We were never as good as they were. They were definitely the leaders, but we went out there and we tried to be pretty cutting edge in EverQuest. And we used to sit and do raids for so long. I would fall asleep in my chair and have someone call me and go like, "Dude, we're finally there. You need to wake up." And we need to kill. So I'd sleep in my chair, wake up, and kill things in EverQuest. It was crazy. I just pure insanity. And that's like people like want to go back. I'm like, I can't go back. But man, was that fun when we did it. Because that was just crazy times.
And how'd you meet your wife again?
That is a great question. I don't know how. I have, in WoW I've been very high, and in WoW I've done really well, and like M+ and some of the things like that. I'm definitely a lot of my like high points are in MMOs as far as like when I've been successful. So great question though. It is. I will say this. It's fun to be top of your game.
It's fun to be really good.
It's fun to be really, really good.
I like those stories, like
if you think
old school internet stories of like, well, we made a call list and we were calling each
Right.
other. Like those are the stories that I'm like, oh man, that was such a fun time to be alive in a weird way. Like there's something really nerdy and fun about it.
Like these workarounds you would come up
exactly.
with for how you would approach this one situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. I mean, it was fun, but it was definitely ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I think most people would look back and go, that was a bad idea.
It was a crazy different time. Like,
Yes.
if you think the 725 is overpowered, if you're looking at old school World of Warcraft PvP, like you'd take the raid PvE items into that, and you could literally just make people explode with the raid items. It was so fun.
I mean,
I didn't do that or anything, but it was really fun.
part of the
Oh, for
fun
sure,
there
it was great.
Yeah.
was the shenanigans around it, right? Like,
Yeah.
like the crazy setup you had to do to make LAN parties work on a particular game. Like in retrospect, you're like, oh god, it seems like it was such a lot of work, and yet when you really think about those situations, it was like, gosh, I have very fond memories of that because it was so
ridiculous.
just in order to like, so 4 of us can play a game together,
Yep.
And back in those days, in my original WoW guild, when I was Alliance, we had a LAN party in Kansas that people drove across the country to get to, and
That's awesome.
we didn't have like any air conditioning units when we got there. We realized we have like 25 dudes in this house. So we went to Walmart and they just like bought like 10 AC units and they returned them after the LAN party.
Oh. Classy stuff.
Well, there was a lot of other, it was a very classy affair, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was.
It's crazy. I mean, that's how like DreamHack or something like that started off with just like that kind of thing. People showing up with desks, bringing their computers. It's kind of crazy. It's a lot of fun when you have those kind of adventures that go along with it. Here's one of my breezy questions, which I'm looking at the clock because there was a bet that I would go under. I was like, there's no way we're going to 30 minutes. And we're over 30 minutes. So,
Yeah, that was very cute that you thought this would go past that.
Oh, Andy.
We have good topics.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. This is one of our best topics.
Okay, I'm ready.
Weird question, but are the mosquitoes as bad as people say?
Yeah.
In
In a typical Minnesota?
I guess I don't know what they say, but they're bad.
But yes, they are.
They're bad. And this is from Josh T in Houston, Texas, which I'm from Texas. I was a small lad in Houston. And yeah, you're unprepared.
You imagine, if you will, an entire state filled with incubation pods for mosquitoes.
Like
thousands and
15,000 of
thousands
them.
lakes
Yeah.
of still water. For
Not
the
including
mosquitoes to-
ponds,
yes.
by the way, or swamps,
Yes.
or anything else.
And then the time of year that they come out, and what would you expect to happen? And that is what happens.
I swear that the ones outside the city are actually worse somehow. I think they're a different breed or something.
I think they spray in the cities more. And
well,
so
but I
it
mean,
keeps it
even just
down.
like I go to my parent-in-laws, is that how you say that? In-laws place, and they live in Buffalo, which is like an hour outside the city. And when I get bit there, like those swell up like 3 or 4 times bigger than the ones in the city. So it feels like it's a different strain of mosquito.
Could be.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's the worst feeling.
Or maybe you're
in the
just
world.
having so much fun visiting your in-laws you don't notice, and it sits on there longer and makes a bigger
Oh,
wall.
Everybody
that's
has
gotta
been
be it.
Yeah, I think that's probably it.
No matter where you live, at some point you've been outside in really bad weather. Imagine if going from the car to the house is think like the worst weather you've been in, where you're like, oh, I gotta run. I gotta get inside real fast before I get too wet. But imagine that it's mosquitoes.
Yeah.
That's what it is like in some places. Like if you're out in the woods, like at a cabin or something, like, okay, are you guys ready? I'm gonna open the car door.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to go.
We are overrun by locusts. Please send help.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd like to say, Houston, Texas gets really, really humid and hot.
Everybody's-
So there's those times when you're like, this is the worst weather ever. We basically have a weather pattern that is mosquito. That is a real thing. So
At least we have those mild Minnesota winters to make up
But see,
for
that's
it.
the thing. The winter gets rid of all the mosquitoes.
Yeah,
They
they're
do.
So you
gone.
only
Go
deal
away
with
for
one
a while.
problem at a time.
One problem at a time. And
there's always a problem.
There are moments, brief moments in Minnesota that it's just a gorgeous place to live.
2 weeks in
Yeah.
fall.
2
That's it.
weeks in
That's
the
what we
fall,
get.
2 weeks in the spring,
September.
but you can't beat it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
Really good.
nice.
Next question from Noah in St. Paul. St. Paul sounds close. Sounds
Could-
very
Sounds
close.
like Mosquito City,
Yes,
USA.
exactly. You maybe could have answered that question. So, hey, Andy, first off, I want to say great job on the show. Thank you. I'm really enjoying your take on the podcast. You have mentioned a few times about how you want to make the show more your own. One of my favorite episodes of the GI Show was your oral history of Game Informer. I think it would be awesome to incorporate a story time section into the podcast that every so often you can tell some stories about your life in the games industry. I think most listeners would get a kick out of the format. There was actually another question that was like, hey, tell more stories. So I am going to try to make sure that we do, and please, by the way, if you've heard a story, that would be a great thing to get to podcast@gameinformer.com. See, I'm getting it in this week. Podcast@gameinformer.com. The things that you might want to hear, and we'll see if we can address them. If there's something that we can speak publicly about it, but we will do our best to tell a story. But I have selected a story for you now that I will tell, and
Story time.
So a little bit of story time, but I don't know if I'm gonna make it like a story time section. I feel like
I think it
Can
would be
we
really.
start? Can we have a fireplace background that we cut to?
I think it would be really cool,
That'd
actually.
be awesome.
And I think if we had time to prepare them, we could actually come up with some
See,
really good ones for everybody.
I bet I know the story you're going to tell, and it's great.
it's. Well, I feel like if we had a story time, I feel like I should come in like Mr. Rogers and take my shoes off, put on
That'd be
my
awesome.
cardigan.
This is a song.
Nothing,
Let's
do that, yeah.
Nothing about this idea sounds bad.
the entire audience that's listening is like, yes, that is what we want Andy to do. But yeah.
I'll have to think about that. That's a lot for me to. I'm just trying to run a show right now. We'll do our best, but we're gonna do one story here. So, all right. So this is back in a time when this happened into the games journalists. This is not as common these days, but 989, who had taken Paul Anderson, he had gone to a demolition derby. They'd painted Game Informer on the hood of this demolition derby car, and he'd blown it up. So 989 was they were next level at this point of doing outrageous events.
Crazy events. Yeah.
So I went on one for Siphon Filter, and we went to some crazy ex-military base. I don't even know the location, in Arizona, in the desert. But it was definitely an old military base, so it had big buildings.
A bunch of you.
Yeah, a bunch of us. A whole team. And I have a picture at home of the whole team because I'm a hoarder, and I have the whole people that were there, and it was quite the experience. But we got there, and there's homes that are lined inside there. This is a base with people, a working base at some point. Obviously not a working base anymore. But we come in, and the whole group comes together, and we sit down to have a meeting about, espionage and military tactics and those kind of things. And a friend of mine, Sean, who was on the PR team, was in there as well, and he will be important to this story in a moment. So about halfway through, they go, hey, we're going to split Betty up, and we're going to talk about different tactics and talk about different things. So you guys go over there, and we'll stay here, and we'll keep talking. So I'm part of the group that gets pulled out, and we go to another room. We go into this other room, and they're like, today we are going to kidnap someone in the other room. And we're like, what? And they start explaining to us how we're going to breach and clear the room and get everyone to listen to us. And they're like, okay, look, when you hold, because we're going to get paint guns, when you hold a paint gun at someone and you tell them to get down and they don't get down, you look at them and you tell them to get the F down now. And I mean, like, they were like, you have to be forceful. And if they don't listen to you say that, you throw them on the ground. And I'm like, what is going on?
This is like an ex-army guy talking to you or something?
Yes, these are old, like, they were like, we're old CIA guys, we're old special op guys, we could kill you with like a pencil if we wanted. We got that whole speech
But we
ahead of
won't
time.
do that right now.
We won't do that right now. I mean, they're intimidating, right?
Yeah.
And I think they might have even had like firearms on them, and we're like, I play video games, and so they prepare us for this. So we have it.
I mean, sort of.
Yes, well, exactly, not entirely. So we have like a diagram of the room. We're like, we're gonna breach in through this door. We know the location of Sean in the room. These people are on grab Sean duty. You're on you're gonna clear this half of the room. You're gonna clear this half of the room. Let's go, right? And they give us masks and paint guns, and we knock this door down on these people that are in this other meeting. And we start screaming at them and pointing these guns at them. And we nab Sean. We take Sean out of this room. And I don't know how no one had a heart attack.
Yeah.
How no one was dialing 911. I guess we didn't really have phones like that back then. No one's calling 911.
Because that's what would happen now.
Yeah, what happened now?
yeah.
Yeah. So because the other people don't know this is they're literally in something like
These are guys in masks who just broke into a video game event.
to a video game event.
Sean's not in on it.
He is in on it. He is the only one who's in on it. He knows he's
But he's
going to be
playing his
taken.
part.
But he's playing his part.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous, right? And so we take them, and they're like, okay, we're going to go to one of these houses. So there's all these homes, probably 24, 48. I can't really remember that details. There's so many other details I remember. That's not one I remember. And we take him, and we put him in the house, and we hide him in the house. I think at the end of this whole thing, he ends up in the bathroom in the tub because we're trying to keep him from getting killed. This guy, we have one of the CIA guys on our team. They have CIA guys on their team. He's like, all right, you cover that window. You cover that window. I want you guys on the roof. And we're like, on the roof? You know what I mean? What do you mean on the roof? Right? Kind of thing. So we're trying to, protect our package, let's say.
Yeah.
And so to keep things spiced up, we're having these kind of attacks throughout the day where they attack us, we shoot back, we run after them and things like that. And there's a time where we're kind of chasing them through the field. And one of the guys on our team pulls up in a car. He's like, get behind me, we're gonna get him. And we're running alongside a car, shooting
safe.
paint guns at other game reviewers and editors in this live event.
Totally safe.
Totally safe, totally ridiculous. But this goes on for a while, and then at the end, we kind of come to the how this thing's gonna end. And the way this is gonna end is that the other team has put together cardboard shields, and they're coming. And so they come to attack the house, and we're shooting at everyone, trying to keep them from coming at the house, but they're not stopping. There's people, I was like, I shot that guy. He's dead. He's dead. That didn't matter. They were coming, right? And they come, and they're shooting, and there's glass breaking. We're shooting paintballs at a house, and this house has furniture in it.
An actual house.
An actual house
Yes.
has carpet, and there's glass breaking, and we're collapsing into the house as they just keep coming shooting. And then we have these firefights in behind the couch where they're shooting at the couch, they're shooting at this whole place. I end up at the end down this hall, and people are raining paint bullets down this hallway, covering the wall with paint as I try desperately to keep our package, which it's over. I get shot. Everyone's dead. We all die. The thing here is that the good guys win eventually.
And they save Sean.
And they say that, but I was like, how does this happen? How? I still don't understand how this happened.
Can you imagine writing up that marketing PR plan? We're gonna
do this. Every time you tell this story, what I like to imagine is that this was a neighborhood that they had just told people hey, listen, there's a termite problem. We're gonna need everybody to clear out. And that a week later, a couple came back with their kids and came to that house, and we're like, what happened?
What happened here? or it's a functional military. I mean, this obviously was a military base somewhere.
Right.
Or this is a functional military base, and someone comes back they're the cleaning crew shows up, and they're like, what happened here?
they did it again.
They did it again. Yeah, exactly. They did it again. So
The PR guy turned to you at the end of this and was like, siphon filter, coming this fall.
Yeah, exactly.
What? How does this tie into the game in some meaningful way?
The further back you go, the more of that kind of. I mean, I think Andy's story of the ones I've heard is about the craziest, just because it was so. The potential for disaster of literally having somebody
breaking
die,
glass.
Yeah.
was so high. But the further back you go in time, the more those events were just kind of that was how you did it. Like if you were PRing this game, you came up with some outlandish idea, and then you would do it.
Yeah, and I mean, it was pretty crazy. I mean, I've jumped out of a plane for video games. There's been all kinds of things, and I'd like to point out, we, as I should point out, for Game Informer, we try not to do these crazy events anymore. We try to make sure we keep things cool, and we don't go to like crazy review events. We try to do that. But this is a long time ago, and this is in the heydays, the early days of game journalism when, I would laugh. I mean, there would be, the same 10, 20 people at events, and now it's thousands that go to like reveal events. It's just a different scale, different thing. That's why it's a thing of the past, but they are funny stories. Once again, Noah from St. Paul, thank you for the question. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you, my wonderful panel. I'm just 15 minutes over what I said I would be.
It's pretty good.
Not too bad. So within the realm. But thanks everybody for listening. We have coming up, we have an interview about Chorus, an adventure musical that I think is fantastic. I'm really excited about. They just hit their goal on Fig, so that's an interesting thing. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Thank you guys for being here, and we will see you next week.
She gave an audition, heartbreaking and pure. A muse on a mission, so strong, so sure. Then she died in my doorway, passed her soul on to me. The power of a god, how was I worthy?
Hello, and welcome back to the final segment of the Game Informer Show. I have two very special guests here. Something that's been going on for the last month is that Summerfall Studios has been doing a fundraiser on Fig for its game Chorus, an adventure musical. And I have two people very key to that project, in Liam Esler and David Gaider, who are leads on this project. So welcome, guys. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
And let me be the first to say, congratulations on hitting your first goal. That is fantastic.
Thank you.
And by the way, there are still days left on the fundraiser. So if you want to head over to Fig, I'll put the link down there to make sure if you want to help them reach their goals over and above to get more things in play. Please head on over there and contribute to the fund. So let's start off things off. So how did Summerfall Studios come to be? Tell me a little about the studio before we start talking about the game.
We take that one, Liam?
I can take that one. So basically, I was running the Australian Game Developers Conference, Game Connect Asia Pacific. I'd done that for about 3 years. I was doing a lot of games work on the side, but had definitely decided that I was ready to jump back in full time. But I didn't want to work for anyone else. I wanted to start my own company. And serendipitously, around the same time, I had a conversation with Dave at GDC where we essentially were just kind of shooting the shit about what our ideal dream studio would look like and kind of ideal dream game. And oddly enough, they were almost identical.
Gotta love that.
I said to Liam, I said, did I tell you about this previously? Because I talked to a few of my other friends about this idea I had for starting my own studio, and I thought it was weird that Liam's sounded exactly like mine, and so we just started talking more.
Yeah, and then over the course of a year or so-ish, we sort of went back and forth, and the conversation slowly became more serious, and Dave came over for Melbourne International Games Week in 2017. And the day before PAX Australia, we had a day-long meeting where we had decided we were going to make the decision or not about whether we would start a studio together. And I think that basically within the first 30 minutes or an hour, we'd kind of moved past the core question and already moved on to what are we going to make? Chorus was the game that resulted eventually from that conversation.
Yeah.
Which is super exciting. I actually love it that on your post on Fig, it says a new take on the video game musical. And I was thinking to myself, did I miss other video game musicals along the way that I am not referencing?
There's been a couple, yeah.
What there have? I was kind of excited. This is a whole new land, a whole new grand. So I've missed them in the past. So I'm really excited about this.
One I just want to call out one, Dominic Pamplemousse and Dominic Pamplemousse 2. So Dominic Pamplemousse actually won an IGF award years ago, and it's like a point and click musical, and it was super cool. There's been a bunch as well, but we're definitely the first one trying to do what we're trying to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because ours is a interactive musical. So as you're going through the songs, you're selecting options that direct the course of the song, and the how the song ends sort of determines where the story goes from there. So it certainly is a new way of approaching the musical for video games, which hasn't had a lot of entries in terms of musicals in video games.
So you guys, obviously, I know this is the first question. It's one of the great things on your first video that you kind of addressed right away. You guys have a lot of experience in RPGs, being that you worked at BioWare for a long time. I know you worked on other titles as well, Liam. So I love that this was your first choice, because I really do think it sounds silly, but the fantasy and mythical and like the Greek tragedy kind of things that you have here all fit within the classic RPG. It's just a new way to kind of show it, which I think is super interesting. So what was I know there was a call of let's make a musical, but how did you guys rally around that and know that you had the skills on hand to really execute something like this?
Well, I think we were considering whether we should make an RPG at first, and that seemed like a no-brainer. And we talked about it, but I think as we talked about it, both of us wanted to do something that was a little bit different, at least, at least for our first project. We weren't going to rule out that we might go back to RPGs for Summerfall eventually, but I think we wanted to do something a little different. I know that when I was at BioWare, I brought up the possibility of doing like a musical DLC as part of Dragon Age. But the studio wasn't really excited about that, and I thought that's fine. It wasn't really a serious suggestion, but when Liam told me, he said, well, if we want to do something different, Dave, what would you want to do? Like, we can do anything. And when I thought about that, I'm like, well, I'd really like to try out that musical idea I had way back. That'd be kind of cool. And Liam was cool with it. So that's really where that went. I mean, there are RPG elements in Chorus. I don't think we'll ever get away from the core that both of us sort of love about RPGs, which is sort of the characters and the reactions, the dialogue. But this is sort of a little element we wanted to add on top of that as well.
Yeah, and you quickly assembled an all-star cast with Austin Wintory, Troy Baker, and then it sounds like Laura Bailey is going to be in this as well. So that's a great start, obviously, down the path. Can you tell me a little bit about, and I know you're in pre-production, I realize this is the beginning of the story, and the story isn't complete, and game development is about iteration, so there's a lot that you'll decide along the way. But can you kind of tell me about what you feel like the gameplay experience will be? Can I fail? I mean, I know it's not can I make the wrong choice and find myself living on the streets, never to do a musical again? Like what? How does the game play out? How do you imagine the game will play?
Do you want to do that one, Liam?
Sure. We don't have to imagine. We know pretty well, actually. We've been working on Chorus for over a year now, full time. So we've kind of nailed down a lot of what Chorus will look and feel like throughout the game. The experience that we're trying to get across to the player is that the power of becoming a god and exploring the uncertainties of a group of people who have become lost over time and try to help them rediscover themselves and sort of break the shackles that they've put upon themselves over the years. And from a gameplay perspective, that's through conversations and dialogue and quest-like structures from RPGs, as well as these interactive musical numbers where the player decides what Grace will sing, and that allows Grace to influence other characters in the game in various ways. So her singing actually performs or changes the world in some very real way.
The songs, in a way, are take the place of our boss battles.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. All right. So it kind of all culminates in the big showstopper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So when I know you can like make choices that are these traits that when you interact with people and it makes dialogue choices kind of come up and go away as far as like at least as my general understanding of reading your post. And then it also made it sound like it would also have influence over perhaps over romance and also to who may or may not join you in a song. Now that starts to get kind of complex. Will there be like people that like join me for a song, or maybe have like a kind of appearance in a certain number based on the choices I make, or will the songs and performances be like predetermined to some degree of like what they will be when I play them out?
Well, the traits themselves, though, they open up options in dialogue as well as options in the song, and they also affect the amount of flow you can gain when you try taking a path during the song. They don't otherwise affect your choices other than opening new ones. But the choices you make can change like the setup for the song. Like you say, so based on the choices you've made in the past, you may have somebody in a song that isn't there originally, or the setup, the path you take through the song may be different. So in a way, the traits could indirectly affect that. Yes.
Okay, cool. So the general songs, now during a song's play, do I make choices, or is it like, are there any rhythm like gameplay elements that I have on affecting the performance itself? Can you explain anything about like what I do when or am I just sit back and enjoy the grandeur?
So it's definitely not a rhythm game. It's essentially, it works very similarly to RPG dialogue, where you're given 3 choices, and each of those has, a different trait attached to them. So there'll be clever, kick-ass, or charming. And pick one of those options, and Grace will sing out the option that you've selected, and that will influence the tone of the song, the lyrics, how the other characters will react in the song as well. So it's wholly interactive throughout. So it's essentially a branching song.
Oh, okay, wow, okay, crazy. Oh, that's cool. So like, how do you have like, does the band kind of settle back and like kind of go into a bridge in those moments when you make a choice?
Yeah, that's one of the ways that we found we had to structure the actual creation of the lyrics, is that once we're approaching a choice point for the song, everybody is still singing. So as we get there, your choices pop up and the song's continuing, but there needs to be a little bit of a musical bridge that gives you a little bit of time, because the options are timed just to maintain the flow of the song.
Yeah, certainly.
So we have the bridge, and there's a timer that counts down, and once it gets to the end, if you haven't made a choice, there's a default one that will be made for you.
Okay, that makes sense. I was like, that's a lot of pressure. I'm ruining this song. So that's really interesting. So basically, if we look at the whole thing, like I make romance choices, I bring this thing. At the end of the day, you've got a lot of like your characters are set within kind of Greek tragedy and kind of this urban kind of modern theme. Can you tell me how those all kind of interact with the story you're trying to tell? Or I know it's obviously one of like discovery is what it sounds like to me, but it seems like a lot to wrap up into one tale, if that makes sense.
Dave, you should grab this one probably.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot going on. I mean, the premise is that the player, her name is Grace, is a member of a band, and one of the 9 muses, shows up to audition for the band, and then later that day shows up at her apartment and dies in her arms, basically, and
oh my gosh,
passes on her power to Grace. And that's when Grace suddenly discovers herself part of this world where the Greek gods, many of them, are still alive and walking around, but sort of hidden in the shadows. And they believe that Grace killed the muse on purpose. They accuse her of that. So it's a murder mystery in a way that you have to prove that Grace didn't do it, but also navigate through this new world that you find yourself within. So I mean, there's a lot going on, but that's sort of what both of us have been doing for all of our careers. That part I have no worry about. We'll be able to manage the the story there, and there's a lot of surprises in store for the player, a lot of things that they can discover while they're on their quest. But I don't think there'll be an issue with there being too much going on. But
Certainly.
yeah, there certainly is a lot for the player to learn. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think a lot of times like musicals and things like that, you know, are associated with live performances, and that kind of experience of being there is like a lot of that. How do you like? That's a really interesting challenge to try to bring that experience to interactive gaming, right? So, what have you done to kind of bring that? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like you kind of get wrapped up in it. You know what I mean? Like that's what really happens when you're at a show. And I think that's kind of a challenge. Have you guys thought about that challenge at all? Like, I mean, obviously, I know you're going to like good storytelling. I got that certainly, but I just was kind of thinking about that as an interesting challenge.
I think a lot of for one, there was a lot of research that we did into a bunch of different musicals. Both Dave and I are huge musical aficionados, and we still spent months listening to many new musicals. And in addition to that, like a lot of the art direction comes from, or it's theatrically inspired. So our art director, Benjamin E., looked more to stagecraft than to film, for example, for how to put together the scenes in chorus and how he would go about sort of playing out these scenes visually. But in terms of that engagement that you feel at the theater, like we're never going to capture that totally live performance aspect. But the most important part is the emotional engagement that you get with the music.
Yeah, and you have agency, so you're directing the music as well. So there's a personal involvement there.
Yeah. So the emotionality of the music and the agency that you have in directing that sort of helps to make up for the lack of live aspect. And that's something that we've had a lot of people who've sort of tested our very early prototypes say to us. And we hope that comes across as well in the final game. So we'll see. We're actually releasing a proof of concept playable over the next couple of days that people can check out that, you know, is not really representative of how the game will look like. And it's a very early stab at what it will sound like, but sort of shows the player how a song might play out.
Oh, awesome. That'll be great.
Yeah. So that will hopefully come out very soon.
So how was that? I mean, you know, I've written lots of things, but if someone said write a song, I would be terrified, right? Like that's that is a totally different way to write and kind of interact with people, right? It's just a totally different entertainment medium, right? So how did you guys were you scared? I mean, like, I know it's easy to say, let's do a musical, but it's another thing to do it. I mean, can you tell me anything about that process and the creative process of writing songs?
Oh, God.
Terror is definitely the appropriate reaction. It's been a trial. I think I've got a bit of songwriting experience, but for Dave, this has been very new. Dave, do you want to talk about like what that's been like?
Well, I mean, I suppose I should have seen it coming because, I mean, each time I've done a few different things in my career as well. I've written a few novels. I've written some comic books, and each time I approached those, it was like, oh, this is a whole new medium. And it's like learning everything all over again. I don't know why I thought songwriting would be any different, but when I first started, I mean, it wasn't just how does one write a song. It was how does one write a branching song that also needs to. Each song has its own narrative arc. Like it has a story that it needs to tell. We need to have these various gaps and throughout that'll leave pauses for choices to be made. How does one do that? Thankfully, I mean, once we got Austin Wintry on board, he was a big help because it was then became more of a establishing a pipeline, which was where do we begin? Do we begin with Liam and myself sort of putting together lyrics and saying, hey, Austin, we're thinking about this kind of beat for this song. How does this sound? Or with Austin giving us some sort of musical bits and saying, hey, here are some ideas, and then us taking that and writing lyrics to the song. And what we ended up with over time discovering is that it's a bit of both. We kind of write a little bit of the lyrics and ideas, hand it to Austin. He takes that, gives us sort of his version of the music. We go, oh, that's cool. We rewrite our lyrics, and then go back and forth. And so it is quite a process. I guess I thought my experience would be more useful than it has been. I mean, the thing that my experience has helped is the branching part of the songs.
Yeah.
I had no trouble wrapping my head around that. That's like branching dialogue. It's not that different, but everything else that goes with the song, like, having evocative lyrics, rhyming, having an arc through a song that would work in the same way as like a Broadway song. We found that's probably the most similar type of music that applies here. That has been quite the learning experience. I'm still going through that.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the processes have been, talking to people who do this, our executive producers from the music industry as well, and they have been able to jump in and be like, maybe this, or like, maybe read this book, like maybe grab this. And that's been incredibly useful. And one of the things that we're really excited to do moving forward is bring on more consultants who can help to sort of light the way for us a little bit. It's definitely been a monumental challenge, and but one that's been incredibly exciting for all of us. Doing something new is always really cool. But one thing that we want to make sure of is that, we're not just being the wide-eyed new kids on the block, and that we're asking the adults for help when we need it, because this is very new to us, and there are so many people who are so much more experienced, and we're really excited to talk to them more.
Oh, that's awesome. So are we going to get some singing samples from you guys on any of these songs? Yeah, come on. No, you're not going to break out? All right. Well, I mean, it's an opportunity.
The thing is, you think you're a decent singer, and then you hear somebody like Laura Bailey or Mary Elizabeth McGlynn or whoever launch into what a real singer sounds like, and you're like, oh no, we're not anywhere on their level at all.
Yeah, like I've done some of the backing tracks and the demo tracks, and I listen to those and then listen to what Laura outputs, and it's embarrassing.
Yeah,
working with professionals, it turns out, is real good.
What do you know? What do you know? So you're gonna have like romantic options, story options. What's the general, like? Are you making this like a family game, like an adult contemporary game? Like, who do you think's the market for, as far as like what kind of message you're just the experience? I mean, PG-13. Like, what do you think you're trying to make?
So we're aiming for a teen rating. We want something that's a little bit. It's got adult themes, but it doesn't go into explicit detail in terms of sex scenes or anything like that. That's not what this game is about. Yeah. This game is about evocative emotional stories, and we don't feel like we need extreme violence. In fact, we want to kind of shy away from that where we can. One of the things that Dave and I spoke about a lot early on was wanting to make a game for people who don't enjoy the violent aspects of video games and don't want combat necessarily, who are more excited about the relationships between characters and, thinking through political problems, but in a dynasty. And that's very much where Chorus comes from.
Yeah, I don't think there's any trouble in making a story that's aimed at adults, but has a teen rating, and thus can, sort of avoid explicit violence or explicit sex. I don't think you need those to make an adult story.
I would agree. And it's great I think finding ways to do games without violence, since it's so often, the verb that we use to make gameplay, is always, I think, an improvement to the world of games. So I agree with that. And it's fun. You can make playful, like you said, playful relationship games. I just didn't know what kind of spectrum you guys were going for. I wasn't entirely sure. I figured it was worth asking.
You definitely need conflict. You need conflict for a story, but conflict doesn't have to be resolved only through violence. And I think that's the important thing to keep in mind.
Oh, well, fantastic. Well, first of all, I wish you guys nothing but the best. I'm super excited for this game. I think it's like I said, I learned something today that there were previous musicals. I need to go out and check those out, because I think this is an exciting thing for games. I'm excited for you guys and what's to come for Chorus. Thank you so much for taking the time today, and best of luck. Hopefully you'll keep getting that dollar sign up so we can get more get more things into the game. Thanks everybody for tuning into the Game Informer show. I'll have links so you can go check out Chorus, a adventure musical, and all the other things that have been on the show. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.